The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Zertis or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, how's it going? So we're gonna try to do this. Yeah. So what do you guys think is going on this week? Because it seemed kind of weird, right? Turkey, maybe. Beetlejuice.
No, thank you.
So I'll start with Beetlejuice then. So like Beetlejuice 2, could it be the Supernova launch? Eddie was talking about this. There's this futurism article that was coming out talking about how scientists are breathlessly waiting for Beetlejuice to explode. Beetlejuice better explode soon or I'll blow myself up. Right. So apparently there's like a big effort by scientists to capture the explosion of the supernova of Beetlejuice. And that's this week's major, like how are we going to do it? How are we going to capture it? How are we going to widen a picture of it? How many satellites would you need to get a picture that's all spread out? And they're just really like freaking out. Because like, when's it going to happen? Is it going to happen in the next 100 years? It should happen now. So we're just trying to get Beetlejuice to explode. Any thoughts?
Well, right out the gate, I just got to point out that the underlying premise of Beetlejuice was exploiting the supernatural for just like money and fame and attention. That's what the family essentially wanted, to pull Beetlejuice and all of his ghost friends out of the underworld so they could turn it into like a museum. And I actually firmly support that kind of a stance. I actually do believe that if there was some way to manifest supernatural powers or ghosts, that it would have been a theme park by now. Or maybe there is one and we just haven't been invited.
I took it a weird direction as a kid. When I first saw Beetlejuice, and granted, I did see the Beetlejuice cartoon before I saw the movie, because I think the cartoon was like for teenage or for elementary kids. I don't know. I was probably 6 when I saw the cartoon, and then maybe
I had these action figures from the cartoon.
Right. And so my understanding was the movie came before the cartoon. And so I saw it as a prequel. And so after seeing the cartoon where Beetlejuice is in love with what's her name again? Lydia. Gosh. And so the way I always saw it was that it's kind of this story about the repressed sexuality of the Pasadena family, right? And then you've got the problems with the repressed sexuality leading to the daughter of this family marrying this evil demon, but the demon's represented by this 30-40-year-old Sunset Strip Boulevard cocaine addict from 10 years prior, right? So he's like a little older than he should be to date your daughter, and that's the responsibility of the parents because they're so self-absorbed.
Yeah, I'd say if anything, maybe more of like a generational tale, with the parents being boomers and their embodiment of goodness being such a thin, false palimpsest that the daughter, I guess she would have been a Gen Xer, seeing their, this is good, we're being good, we're doing good things. To her, it's so boring and it's so empty. So she's like, let's check out evil because everything I've seen about good is totally fake.
Didn't what's his name turn out to be like a pedophile?
Well, legend.
Right,
honestly, I think there might even be 2 in this picture.
You're going on looks. Well, first of all, one of them's just got red hair, so that's not fair. Not all redheads are redheads.
Yeah, I mean, the cartoon was definitely weird just because.
Like, what's the deal with the whole goth movement, right? Like, girls never were in love with death. Well, American girls, I guess Mexican girls always have been, but American girls were never in love with death until the 80s. That's when the 80s and the 90s is when goth started. So it's like a rejection of goodness, because the representation of goodness that they were born into is so fake. And I mean, I felt that same way too. I just don't like to wear all black.
I feel like the romantic period might have been kind of interested in death. I think, you might go back and look at some like Frankenstein, right? And some of the books at the time. And maybe there was a bit more of a morbid curiosity in the Enlightenment period.
Amongst kids though, I mean, like a youth movement.
I don't know, like teenage girls being into like poetry probably goes back, I think, and the idea of it being about death. I think that's probably a pretty common thing. But I think it did end in the 20th century because you had a point where at the beginning they said, we're going to remove the parlor room and have the living room. And maybe that left a void in people. And they're like, well, really, even though I'm living in Pasadena and everything's pastel, everything's still dark on the inside or something like that. Everything's still dark. But it was weird because like the movie's about how she's trying to escape him, and then the cartoon's about how they live happily ever after.
Right?
They're married together, which is kind of weird. She married a demon, and she has to go through the portal to like visit him. So it's kind of like a long distance, like their travel relationship, like yuppies or something. It's pretty weird.
Now, do they have like a consummated relationship, or is it more just like they're like gal pals that love to like joke around with the sandworms and stuff? I mean, it is a kid's cartoon, but what did you get from that they're like really like?
My inference was the wedding sequence, right? Like they're like somehow they got married in this movie. It didn't quite end exactly the way, she didn't have to go down with him, but she likes to go down there. She like chooses to go down to the Tartarus or whatever is going on. I don't know. Yeah.
To maintain sanity, I've always had to separate the cartoon from the movie because they drastically kind of treated the characters in completely different ways. Like this was the nice, friendly Beetlejuice that you wanted to be your friend, whereas the movie you would never want to hang out with that Beetlejuice because he would turn into like a big snake with teeth and eat you.
Did he have a character arc at the end? Did he have like a coming to God moment or something? I don't remember.
No, he gets like trapped and eaten by the snake.
Oh, so he
demon
doesn't learn
thing.
any lesson or anything. All right.
But I don't think this guy did either. I don't think he's really that great. I think kids like being around mischievous characters is the point. And so they just kind of accentuated the fun that you would have hanging out with an eccentric character. But it doesn't mean he's not nefarious and evil and constantly manipulating everybody. And he's a bad husband who's making mistakes. Like, it's very honeymooners. Like, oh man, he spent all the money that we were.
What's the
saving.
archetype? Is he like Puck?
I mean, kind of. But I think of him again like a coked out 40-year-old in Sunset Boulevard who's preying on 16-year-old girls. Like, that's kind of the.
Oh,
You could almost say like an adult Bam Margera.
See, I thought of him more as like the cloistered hermit, like the guy that like shut himself away.
Maybe. I don't know, because he's
I
always
haven't
out.
seen
No.
this movie in like 30 years. So
Yeah, he's out there. He's
I think
trying to
he got shut away, but he never wanted to be shut away.
Right.
He wanted to go out and live life.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that's kind
okay.
of, it's interesting also. I forget if we talked about it last time, but this idea of there's another version of the story where Titans are trapped 1,000 years under the world and they're supposed to come out. And in the Bible, it says Titans are supposed to be destroyed after 1,000 years. But in this other version of the story, they're going to defeat the evil that's above the world that's been here for the last 1,000 years, and that'll bring it. So the Titans are waiting to be the good guys on one hand, and I find it interesting because all these stories of stars, they're saying, okay, well, we're waiting for the supernova explosions, which were associated with Beetlejuice. It kind of feels the same. Like, what is the story of Beetlejuice? He's trapped, and he's trying to get people to say his name and to invoke him in order to. I'm sure I said it more than 3 times, by the way. I'm sorry about that, but they want to bring him. They want to invoke him.
So just to be clear, astronomically, quote unquote, scientifically, this could happen anytime within the next 100 years, you said? So it's completely unclear when it happens.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
So my first question is, what are all the things that are not being talked about? Because this week in the news, NASA is doing something again, it's trying to decode a photograph from 5x5 pixels. That's my first question. And the other thing is, just like you said, what is the symbolic connotation? Why do they want this word around right now? Or this meme?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely getting people to say it throughout their day, right? Invoking it. And there's something weird about Beetlejuice, the idea that it's magical. What's the deal with
wonder what the rule was. Is there a certain amount of time that has to pass between the 3 sayings? Or if I said it once today, once tomorrow, and once the next day, does that count as saying it 3 times?
I bet you that I think the idea of Beetlejuice is also just more importantly, they're trying to get you to the repetition. They're saying if people do it, if people are talking about it, it makes relevance to it. And people weren't talking about Beetlejuice before that movie, and all of a sudden it became a very huge symbol, right? Yeah. And it kind of just got people to say it at least 3 times. I don't know. Well,
what's our track record with accurately predicting supernova explosions?
I don't think it's great, but they have this idea of expansion. They're like, well, this thing is at a certain point, so then usually about that size, they're supposed to explode, and so it must have been over 100 years that they were expecting it should have happened, and now it's supposed to happen at any point. I don't know. It seems.
And you said they're going to try to collect the energy of the explosion?
No, they want. Well, probably, but what they say is they want to record it. They want to be able to record it like perfectly to understand what happens and have the perfect metrics of it. So they want to be there for it, essentially. I mean, NASA. I didn't know what was the thing that you were saying, Raph, about decoding the 5-pixel picture. Do you know?
I was inferring a joke in terms of when they discovered the black hole 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it came out that it was like a 9x9 pixelated thing of something where they, according to NASA's model, I'm sure something comes out of it, but it's like, yeah. To me, this is like distraction. And another
this reminded me from the very beginning.
Along with the royal wedding, I guess. But please, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. This reminded me right from the very beginning of the black hole picture. Like, what is this? Why is it being popularized right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
Have you guys seen the new clearest to date picture of Jupiter, allegedly?
No, or maybe.
That dropped yesterday. I think yesterday.
Jupiter, let's see.
I posted a few like last year. Wasn't anything new.
No, none of those are it. It looked super fake, honestly, but no.
These did too. These were about a year old. They showed like storms on the surface and shit.
Something like this thing?
No, it looked like a CGI planet. I mean, but it looked crazy. It was so wavy, like the color lines. Like it didn't look like they ever showed Jupiter looking before, and it didn't even have the big storm spot. I was just like, that's Jupiter. No, it ain't coming up now, but that's strange.
They don't want me to know. We'll have to find it. I have to do a correction on one of the things. Where is that at with money? So I'll go back to the DNA thing later. But so
do you think there's other reasons? Do you think there could be other reasons they don't really have like good? I know we have composite pictures of the Earth, but people always say once the telescope's like halfway, close enough to Jupiter, why doesn't it turn around and just shoot a great picture of like the Earth? Do you think there's other reasons besides? I mean, I'm not a flat Earth or anything. I have no idea, but do you think there could be other reasons they don't want to show us a picture of the Earth besides its shape?
I mean, even if it was just okay. So trying to find devil's advocate position, I think the story would be that there's enough in between it that there would be difference. There'd be items that are in between in the picture, and then the Earth itself has stuff floating over it. So, whether a satellite's in the way, probably they'd say it's impossible to get a decent picture. But beyond that, yeah, like what else could be out there if there was something at all? Here's the pictures that Raf's talking about. Let me pull up the Nikon thing. Is this it, or is this different? What's this, Raf?
I think that's the one, where you have at least supposedly someone with a real camera just zooming in, and this is the images they get. We can speculate now as to why, but at least this is something that can be independently.
That I've seen those with my own eyes, like looking like weird laser discs and stuff. But like then, like how close you have to get before it starts looking like one of these NASA perfect planet images? Because I mean, that's what it actually looks like.
Well, I don't know. The goal is to get beyond.
If you go to the observatory and look at a planet, does it look like that, or does it look like I saw someone
only at the Lucifer Observatory, probably?
What's that?
Only at the Lucifer Observatory. That's the one they have.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm wondering because like I saw somebody had a daytime picture of Saturn they posted the other day with their P1000, I guess, and you could see the rings and everything, and it didn't look anything like one of these flashing lights. So I'm just like, is that an artifacting thing of like they always say it's the atmosphere that creates that effect, but then there's other things you can see perfectly through the atmosphere, like the moon. So
I don't know. Saturn seems kind of looking through atmosphere, looking through fog or something like that. You can imagine that we're probably looking through something that could also affect it. Like,
is that like Sirius, the dog star? It looks so close, bro. Like I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but I used to go up on my roof in Venice and I'd just see it. It would be flashing different colors at me, and I just pull out my Amazon $100 binoculars. And I could see it turning shapes and colors like totally clear as day. And I was like, it looks so close. It looks like it's like a drone just hovering right over the ocean, But that's just looks. I mean,
it is also weird. Like you can see Sirius, Beetlejuice, and Orion's Belt, I believe, on the south equator side where you can't see a lot of different stars. I forget if that's true. I'm pretty sure you can see Orion and the Little Dipper or something. Like you can't see all the same sets of stars. So once you get used to constellations in the north, and then you go to the other side of the world, right?
Southern Cross can't be seen from the north.
Right. So I don't know. That's kind of interesting that you can see Orion still. That makes it like across.
Brittany is asking if shouldn't the moon be blocked by those satellites too, Andreas?
Yeah. Right. I mean.
Well, if they were small enough, it would be like your brain would just edit it out from what you're looking at. If it's like a tiny black speck or something,
If there's a lot of them moving it, however fast they're supposed to be moving,
and if if they appear as like stars, like the Elon's Starlink does, and if they were backlit by the moon, you wouldn't see them either. So
it's plausible enough. I'm just saying, like you gotta admit. There's a story there. All right, I did need to correct this though because I was saying they weren't supposed to put King Charles' face on money. I was wrong. British people are up in arms. They're throwing kebabs at me. King Charles III's face does appear on money. Apparently, they said in December at some point they started putting a few bills out, but it's like Pokemon. You can't get them. They're very special. And then by mid 2024, they're supposed to be in circulation.
They should put them on Bud Light.
Well, so in that vein, Australia and Canada are not necessarily going to put his face on the bills. They're looking towards a more EU solution of removing the faces. Australia might do it, I think, and then Canada was looking at not. I thought it sounded like commemorative medallion, but we'll likely add legal tender soon as per tradition. It might take a while there, so we'll see. But no one I know has seen any British currency with the king's face. As far as I haven't seen it. Tell me when you see it. Please let me know. I'm not living in a British Commonwealth country, technically. But I'd
Do you
like
think they'll how will they attach the monarch's face to when it goes to like a crypto dollar?
So yeah, I'm very curious, but I feel like that's the NFT, right? So it'll be like that monkey coin.
Yeah, I listened to Russell Brand talk for like an hour all about the details of the coronation and all this stuff I never knew because I don't really know much about the royals, but there's some weird little activities. Anointing with magical oil from the Holy Land.
Yeah.
That one you can't watch. They take them behind a curtain and anoint their head, hands, and heart with holy olive oil from Jerusalem.
Isn't that adorable? Yeah. But then
I was
the
watching
stone,
just
right?
an excerpt of it. Exactly. The stone is one thing we have to get to, but also just through this excerpt, I was like, how many things is this guy getting? Like here you have this stuff and here you have this and also take this. And I'm like,
who's going to carry all that stuff for you? Yeah.
That's the only time he ever touches all that stuff. He doesn't even know where they keep it. They just take it away. That's just for the coronation. Like the real people who are running the show, like keep
sure, but
that
there
there.
must be symbolic meaning to each and every one. Otherwise, they probably
Oh my gosh,
wouldn't
of course.
play
Yeah, I
around
know the
with it,
crown
right?
is like something like 40 pounds of 24 karat gold or something like that with 400 precious gemstones on it. It's just like the ultimate betrayal of their alleged diversity and like inclusion goals. Or like, and this is my giant, we pillaged all of Africa hat. You know, it's got 400 gemstones.
Well, it's everywhere. Africa, India, right? That's
yeah.
He's got, and so we were looking at the other day, but there's like
It's
11
insane,
gems and 17 sapphires or whatever the deal is.
There's 400 gemstones. Is that the same one they put on?
17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, 269 pearls, 4 rubies, and they're from all over the conquered territories. Which is a pretty trippy hat, I'll admit. I kind of want one, but maybe small, like a laurel wreath would be fine. What was I at? Okay, scone stone though, right? Scone stone's weird. We've talked about this before. You know, this is supposed to be Jacob's ladder. He slept when Jacob runs away in the Bible. He gets away from, stealing the blessing. He gets exhausted. He falls asleep on a stone. He sees angels ascending and descending upon the golden ladder. And that's the scone stone. So they bring that to Scotland. And it's weird because also that's saying that the tradition is you have to prove that you're a royal by proving your family's not from England. And then you have to crown yourself on the stone that's not from England. I mean, it's very weird tradition in general.
And they're not from England, aren't they? Like the Saxberg-Gotha family from Germany.
At very least, but
yeah, exactly.
Their religious belief in themselves.
What happened to the actual
Solomon, right?
The Henry family? What happened to his actual children? Because he had tons of children. Did they just kill them all in World War II or something? Or like where are the actual lineation?
There's a bunch of things. Let me really quickly show like the Queen's heritage to Solomon thing, because like the whole thing is the Queen says she has linked to Solomon, but if you look at like the Sophia Naturalization Act is one of the examples. They made it impossible to be a member of the royal line if you were a Catholic, and so it cut out like 300 or 400 of the more important royals in Britain at the time. And also, ironically, I think it was it Charles III pretended not to be Catholic his whole life, got baptized secretly. I don't know if it was on his deathbed that he got baptized or if he got confirmed on his deathbed, but he definitely was secretly a Catholic. And so there was a lot of other things because they're saying, okay, we can't work with the Catholic Church directly, but they were. So it was very weird at the time, and it was to cut out all of these families that would have otherwise become the royal family, and that brought in what's his name of Hanover, George of Hanover or whatever. Is that right?
So what's certainly
House
been,
of Hanover,
not astounding, but maybe amusing to me is you watch all these like boulevard type interviews of people at the coronation, and of course we're so excited, and then they always keep arguing with things like, oh, it's tradition, like in the PR type
tradition.
This is tradition. This is thousands of years and so on. And I'm like, what? These guys probably usurped whoever was there before 100 years ago. What are you even talking about in terms of tradition and so on? And he would even be able to properly trace this just because I got some old slab, there sitting on it. And I'm like, yes, I claim thousands of years of superiority and divinity. And I'm like, they have no proof of anything, do they? I mean,
right, but it is pretty weird, right? I mean, so like the idea that it comes from Jacob's ladder, that's a weird reason to think that makes you king. I mean, that's That's like Bach level weird. That's
Mhm.
not normal mainstream way of thinking. Like, but
No, that's doing something in plain sight that doesn't make any sense to the public, but it makes sense to a very select few, probably.
it's
Like,
strange.
the meaning has been removed from all traditions. Like we still practice traditions too in America, but we don't know the meaning of any of them. Like Thanksgiving, you have like one image. It's like a big table outside with like Indians and pilgrims eating. You know what I mean? Like Christmas, you're like, we bring a tree in. That might be Saturnalia. We might be Druids now. I don't really know what we're doing. You know what I mean? It's like we really don't know what's going on. But we continue to do these traditions, just stripped away of any understanding of why, which is almost worse than not having them.
Here's a vibe on that level. So, bankrupting Vice, we talked about that. And now MTV is bankrupt, right? You heard about that. So
MTV News.
MTV News, sorry. But still, that's like the CIA's main, that was their big thing besides like CNN.
Was Kurt Loder CIA agent?
I mean, are you kidding me?
What about Adam Curry?
I don't know
What about
Adam
Pauly Shore?
Ooh.
What about
Pauly
Randy
Shore-
of the Redwoods?
Pauly Shore is better than a CIA agent because
Anybody
his mom,
remember Randy
his
of
mom
the
owned the
Redwoods?
comedy factory, so she got to be around a lot of Shriners. So he's, but I think this is interesting because these shows like MTV News and Vice, like they were kind of the cool kid, and because of that, they were considered authentic news networks for people. They're like, oh yeah, I can trust Vice. Like when they send somebody to Afghanistan, I can trust them. That was the way people felt. When MTV's got somebody on the scene in East Berlin, I'll know that it's true.
Well, because reality TV, right? The Real World, they started reality TV on MTV.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was. I feel like they embodied it. I don't know. Technically, I wonder if reality TV.
There was reality TV before that. I can't think what it was right now, but that was definitely the modern reality TV format.
I mean, Cops was kind of a prototype, right?
Was Cops before Real World?
But 60s documentarian
so.
things
I
like
think Cops
James
was
Nicholson. James Nicholson's Wild in the Streets, and a lot of these guys who made movies in the mid 60s that used to be documentarians, and those kind of things existed. I think that like paved the way as an art for reality TV, figuring out how you can like play into the authenticity of a moment, which also Lars von Trier used, right? Because he made Dogma films in Sweden and Denmark, and the Danish Dogma films, you have to film on location. You have to use natural lighting, and everything else. And that kind of sells the authenticity. You can't use props that were brought in. They have to be things that were there. You can't wear clothes that don't naturally suit, and all these things. I mean, that built this idea of reality, but then because of that, you can implant and supplant all these ideas into that and the product placement. So then those things seem true until nothing seems true. And then you're living in this thing where everything's this like abyss of whiteness in the sky. And you're like, what is it? That's 5 o'clock. There's no more reality. About 5 o'clock it ends. And that was how I think TV ended, really. Remember MTV had, what was that dude who sold the Etnies, the DC guy?
God. Rob Diedrich, or what's the guy's name? Can't think of his name.
MTV, Rob, God, what's his name?
The skater, right?
You're right. You're totally right. Yeah. This dude terrifies me. I don't know. Like, is there anybody who's more horrifyingly terrible? He's genius. I mean, he's evil and genius. Like, his shows are bad. He completely took over MTV. He forced out every other piece of content they had. He replaced it with just 24, 48-hour reruns of himself, branding and product placement for his own shoes. The dude made billions of dollars and just walked away and destroyed MTV. I mean, is that not the most genius move? I don't know.
Respect.
Terrifies me, really. I don't know.
But change up from skater,
But what's going to happen now? I guess that was actually supposed to be a question. What's supposed to happen now for reality? Because they're getting rid of all these things. Fox losing all these things are being destroyed from that age. Even MTV and Vice. What are we left with?
I think if people start making their own shows with any kind of budget on Twitter, I think that's a game changer more than Rumble. I think everyone
does the CIA have like the net? Like they're like, we don't need MTV. We've got Lego.
Well, yeah.
Like, what is it? Like,
but then you still have to explain if the content gets more truthery and hardcore. Is it just like are they just exposing their methods or whatever you call that, or is it another kind of reverse psychology propaganda or something like? I mean, we're talking about Tucker Carlson on Twitter, right? He's going to have a show on Twitter, and he's going to be way more shooting from the hip than he was on Fox, which was already really hardcore for American TV.
Where's that bit? I've got that thing somewhere. Tucker.
It's going to be a huge change for how we consume media if it all moves to Twitter. I mean, it seems like Elon Musk is going to be able to create his X platform that's like everything on one platform.
But Elon Musk says no deal has been signed with Tucker Carlson. He's just going on to Twitter, right? Which is interesting because he cut his deal that he had. Right? Okay, so it's just the same deal as everyone else.
Yeah, anyone can do it. Yeah, and I'm sure they do have some sort of a handshake arrangement. They don't have a contract, is what they don't have. I'm sure they have a deal. I mean, they spoke, and he ended up going on to Twitter, so they made some kind of a deal, but they just don't have a contract.
I don't know, man. That seems kind of interesting.
It's interesting to me that this wouldn't have happened without an Elon Musk Twitter. Like there would be no safe refuge for Tucker Carlson at Twitter under a Jack Dorsey or whatever, you know, the cabal was before Elon came and shook things up, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Like name one other place on the internet that you think you would go to experience more reach and more freedom. You know, you'd go to Rumble for more freedom, but your reach would be, you know,
Andreas asked that question about like where's the CIA's role in this. I think that if you think blue sky, look at how people self-censor themselves on like YouTube for the advertisers. Imagine there's a reality in which we do have a digital global currency and the CIA just says, hey, we're just going to airdrop tokens to anyone that's producing good content. But if you get this like nasty red flag on your account, you don't get any of those token drops. So now all of a sudden, because that's what the CIA, my opinion, does. It's like they look for cool things that they're interested in and they just funnel money into it and say, keep doing more of this thing that you're doing. Give me the research. Give us the heads up when you have some cool breakthrough so we get, you know, the first dibs on it. And I think that they can just like expand that so that they don't even have to know you personally. It's just like you get these token drops and then just the merit of other people finding you interesting means they give you more money. And the second you step out of line, you start talking about that truther stuff, bam, you don't get any more token drops. And it's a little bit different, but also very much the same as just regular old monetization. It's just taken to the very next level.
Yeah, right. You know, Elon could do something totally revolutionary, which is not beyond him considering he wants to integrate banking into the X too. But even if we are in a crypto dollar and the government has the ability to punish you monetarily, you know, for saying the wrong things on the internet, it is possible that Twitter could have some kind of interface where you never convert your Twitter tokens or whatever you get paid into currency at all, but you can use it from your Twitter bank for things that are on Twitter. So let's say you do a show that has 1 million viewers and you get $100,000 or whatever on Twitter. Maybe you can spend that money for stuff on sale on Twitter or for your bandwidth or for your server space that you're buying.
I honestly think that's coming in a very near future where like you'll have General Mills dollars and that'd be
sweet, but
Procter Gamble dollars.
SEC really clamped down on Odyssey when they made their own.
Odyssey doesn't have Elon Musk.
True, but I don't know. I wonder about the SEC because they've been trying to really stop everyone from making their own currencies, and you know, then again, that kind of plays into the Apple.
What's the definition of currency versus token?
Right. What if you just have a ledger?
That's what I mean. And like if you just have your money is in a Twitter bank, and it's like, do you want to change it to PayPal and get crypto dollars? You're like, no, I'll just leave it on Twitter, but you can use it for things on Twitter.
It's like reward points, right? Like technically your Visa reward points isn't currency, but it can be converted into currency.
Right. So I'm thinking right away about advertising. That's something you wouldn't have to. You already have the money in Twitter tokens, you know, and you can put it into advertising. You can put it into bandwidth. You could upgrade your show to 4K uploading, or you know what I mean. Like there's tons of ways you can reinvest without ever leaving the platform.
Apple did this. So Apple had, what was it, $1 trillion overseas, right? From 1997 to 2012, they made so much money that it was like a new kind of money. And so they had to have islands from the former Japanese economic crash that they bought, just like stockpile money like cocaine. And now they couldn't figure out like how we get the money back in the country. Well, really, why would you, right? Put the money everywhere else is the thing. And we got to the point where I don't know if this is the right name of it. This isn't the right bank, but Apple is doing, Apple is doing their own banking system now where they have a ledger system and they've got in $1 billion or $2 billion in deposits in 4 days. And they've got this money because they have all the money they already have as collateral around the world. So this is a way to deal with the fact that they weren't able to bring that money back into the United States without major taxes. And they've been trying for decades to try to get the government to just say, okay, we won't tax you, because that would be crazy, right? To tax you. But that didn't quite work. And so now just becoming a bank, right? So that's another source for digital dollar around the world, especially in like South America where they still have to use the dollar so much.
is it technically a bank or a wallet? I wonder. I don't know if I totally understand it.
New savings account product. I don't know exactly what it is.
Somebody in the chat brought up a good point, which is airline miles, right? Like that's a fungible token basically that I can buy real world things with, or like credit card reward points, or there's a whole bunch of other examples of. So what is the principle there, or what's the precedent? What can the SEC crack down on or not? Why don't they crack down on Marlboro bucks? Because you buy the Marlboros, you smoked all the cigarettes, but now you have these bucks left, and you can buy real world products with them. You can get tire covers, you can get jackets, whatever. But at no point are you spending money.
So, in fact, savings account offered by the largest U.S. banks often pay 0.1 APY or less. Apple's new savings account offers 4.15 APY on deposits. For someone who has 10,000 in their account, this means there's 400 more in income compared with big bank saving account. So that's a big part of it. Also, is that the more that they have, the more they can do their crazy trading, and they're making huge amounts of interest on being able to invest with AI, right? So they know how to make money.
That bottom paragraph on the screen, it says that Apple's not the bank itself, it's actually Goldman Sachs. That's what it says, right? The savings account, right. Apple's not becoming a bank, it's Goldman Sachs, same bank behind the credit card.
There you go.
So what did Apple actually make? Just an interface or an app or something? Or?
Oh, I don't know. Apple's users, I'm sure they're connected, like they work together. Goldman Sachs probably also helped them deal with their money overseas, right? Who knows?
Really interesting.
Yeah, and the idea of like companies
Also
that
read the
were
last
in tech
paragraph.
Banks.
It gives you 10 times the yield, and read what's written. The very last one, and read what's written in the brackets on the very bottom.
Is it? Further?
Yeah, there.
There's no catch.
There's no catch. There's certainly no catch. Yeah, but
There's
it's probably
certainly no
what you
catch.
said. They know what to invest in. Who knows what kind of technology in the background, which yields a lot more than 4% APY, whatever this may be.
That seems like the point. They figured out, and this is going to be a major, AI banking investments. This is already kind of triggering the AI sector because ChatGPT knows what things are successful. If it has access to the internet, it knows what's going on right now, and it can make pretty shrewd investment based on what kind of investments have been made in the past. So it says, okay, when things are at this level, you should sell, and you should risk it up to about that point, and then you should buy. And it's, people were paying for scripts that they could use 10 years ago to buy and sell Bitcoin. And now this stuff is just ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
But the difference is that those scripts were more or less decentralized, where you could run it on your own in your own little platform, and no one knew. But with ChatGPT, if everyone's going to ChatGPT,
that's what I'm
get
thinking.
The advice. Now they have this like central brain trust. They know what everyone wants, so they can actually manipulate what they want.
Forget Jim Cramer if you want to short sell someone's stock. If ChatGPT is like, well, I've just, with no bias, searched the entire internet and all the information in history, and I tell you sell. And then, like you said, everyone's on ChatGPT, and then your company's out of business the next day.
Google Maps is expanding itself into routes, and it's kind of a crazy thing, because you think about how people travel and they use the same software to navigate. So if everyone's using the same path, then it creates more traffic. So Google has to navigate people through different paths in order to make sure that not everyone's on the same path. So it's figuring out who's going where, and it's deciding which path it wants you to take. And it's probably starting to figure out if that's based on the importance of what you're doing, right? So all of a sudden they're like, well, you should probably take the back road because this guy's a doctor or something. I mean, all of it is starting to happen immediately. And people are saying, well, this is really important because this person's an emergency response worker. They need to get to the road first, which will replace sirens, right? Because people just don't know where they're going anymore. I think that's scary.
Yeah, it's like a residential neighborhood wrecker too, because then all of a sudden you've got your little suburban street becomes like an offlow from the highway or something. That's
where I live, on one of those streets.
Yeah.
You can.
I was in Venice, and like every
start
street
diverting the traffic, and I wonder too, how long or far away are we from a cop pulling you over and saying, "Hey, you're not on your suggested route.
You're not following GPS." I never.
Yeah, like I know you're on your way home, but you're taking like the important person.
I feel like they'll skip that step because it'd be way easier just to send you a fine for taking the more CO2 just taxing road.
Skip all the steps, and they'll just roll it out with driverless vehicles once that's compulsory. You know, all that will be taken care of. I mean, that's soon. It's
We're
like
getting
Minority
close.
Report, we're jumping from car to car.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's a city life with the Ubers. I mean, okay, so it also Tucker Carlson, the reason he was fired, I think we've all heard this, but we've also suspected it was about Dominion, I think, right? We kind of thought that was the most likely thing. And it looks like that's what's really going on, that Fox had to lose him as part of their settlement with Dominion because he said that their machines were awry or something like that.
He actually never did. He was the most supportive. He was the most anti-Sidney Powell's lawsuit against Dominion. If anyone on Fox, it's Hannity that was the one that was buying into all that. There was a CIA gunfight in Germany at a server bank and all that stuff. That was Sean Hannity who was doing all the QAnon stuff. And Tucker was like, I invite Sidney Powell on any time because I think she's crazy. Where's your evidence? You're making crazy assertions. Then we had his leaked text messages where he's like, I hate that C word, you know, and just was really going off on her. So he called BS on this from the beginning, and he actually got a ton of heat of it from Trump supporters. Were like, oh, Tucker sold out. He's with the CIA now and everything, you know. So it's interesting that that Dominion, I mean, who's Dominion? Did they have a parent company? Is it BlackRock or, I mean, who owns Dominion?
I mean, I'm sure
BlackRock,
some
right?
fraction of the large fraction.
So probably it's whoever owns Dominion is the one that has the beef with Tucker over like housing trends and like cultural trends, which is like what he mostly goes on about, you know.
Fact check looks good. 45.7 million shares of Fox at very least. That's something there. Also RFK Jr. So Danny brought this up the other night on Low Value Mail. My uncle wanted to shatter CIA into 1,000 pieces. Apparently RFK Jr. came out and said the CIA killed his father and his uncle. Which, you know, we've been saying it, but it's kind of interesting that he said it. What do you think about that? That people are now publicly saying, yeah, this was a thing that happened. Are they trying to separate the past from the present, or are they trying to actually attack and clean up?
We shouldn't be too cynical to believe that everybody is an actor. You know what I mean? So Ron Paul went on Tim Cast and he said that too. He said the real coup is in 1963 when the CIA killed the president. So yeah, it is nice.
I just feel like they're comfortable with coming out with certain parts of it now. It seems like, you know, once you get a certain foothold, you can kind of release the shit that's not going to get you in trouble anymore.
Well, if he's a free person, he could say anything he wants anytime. I mean, are you saying that RFK,
well, that too.
You think he's
sure?
He's
well,
like
I mean, he's not in trouble for saying it. You know, like I don't think there's gonna like these things are more normalized now. You know, Tucker was talking. It's a big news story on Fox News and everything. It's like, well, why is this suddenly allowed to be talked about? You know,
it wasn't. They fired Tucker, but you can't fire RFK from being. He'll always have the last name Kennedy, and he'll always get airtime, and he'll always get a microphone. You can't blacklist a Kennedy, and he's got so many advantages. One, I mean, Trump was like a very selective truth teller. You know, he'd pick out like one thing and go hard on it. RFK Jr. is the kind of guy, if you ask him about any subject, it seems like he's going to give you like his like truest take on it, you know? So he's like, we're kind of missing the point here is like when Trump came into politics, it's like, whoa, we've never had someone just come say true things like this. RFK Jr. is like 100 times better at saying true things about, and not just strategic things either, but like just telling you as a true opinion on any manner of things and speaking intelligently. No 5D chess where you speak like a 5-year-old because that's what people want to hear, but like actually speaking like a grown-up, intelligent, telling you the truth, famous, rich, and running for president. It's kind of like we never had that before. You know what I mean? So people are kind of downplaying how important RFK Jr. is.
Is that what America wants, though? I feel like that's the opposite of what America wants. Is
for president? I don't know.
Straight cut, like intelligent person. I feel because it feels like for the last number of elections that I've been alive, it's really been down to who do I want to have a beer with. You don't want to have a beer with a guy that keeps talking about how the CIA killed his uncle. You want to have a beer with a guy that's like, hey, look at that fatty over there.
Yeah, until you have a beer with that guy every night for 4 years, and then you wind up homeless and paying $7 for gas. Then maybe you want to have a beer with the other guy.
It's like dating, right? Like they'll be on their best behavior. They put out like all of those feelers that make you interested, and then bam, once you get locked into the 4 years, then they start getting lazy and fat, and everything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again with the Trump thing, then right? Because like then they're also bringing up the Trump, the rape of Trump. I think is the way to look at it.
Before we switch off RFK and Trump, can I say one more thing about that? Why do you think that this will be the first time since the advent of television debates that we're not going to have primary debates for either party?
Because they can't control them at all.
Well, what are they trying to control specifically, do you think?
The narrative.
Most people think it's to not embarrass Biden, right? Most people
I think
I would say not let him fall apart on public.
I don't
television.
think what. Yeah, that's.
But I
exactly
think it's
right.
the opposite. I think it's to not let RFK debate Trump. Because I think they love Trump's message of I will focus on one topic to exclusion, and I'll just shape the world image into a tiny pinhole, and it's so easy to control everything.
That is true. I think that's part of the deal. That the debate is a show. It's not a debate the way you can go watch like an Oxford University debate or the classical style debate. I mean, and even they have started to fall apart. But the debate used to be to have people that didn't necessarily even care about what they were talking about, and that might have been better to have the most extreme argument. So someone just argues for evolution, someone argues against evolution, or someone argues for building a road, someone argues against building a road, and neither one of them should really care about the road. They should just be arguing as hard as possible, using argument as like math, using logic and ethics and these skills. That's what an argument should be. And you don't even really need the president, or I mean, honestly, the president should be a spokesperson who's learned that rhetoric and is supposed to argue, well, the platform of this issue or something like that, whether they believe in it or not. Like, look, I don't make the laws, I just enforce them, kind of a person. And
he's an executor. That's what they're supposed to be.
But so the way a debate is turned into today is that you have the populace who doesn't know what's going on. And so you inform them in this show where you're like, well, we all know what's going on. Have you ever seen a movie where the scientists are talking about things that obviously they wouldn't say aloud because they would know these things because they're scientists? They're like, well, that would be the best way to magnify it. Yes, we should look into it right away. They're actually just faking having this argument so that they can show you what the road that they're talking about is, because you don't even know about the road that they're arguing about. And at the end of the conversation, the argument between the two politicians, then you decide, oh, this is what needs to be done. The entire audience has found this. It doesn't matter who gets elected, because that wasn't the point. The point was to convince the populace that this agenda needs to be commenced by whomever you decide you want, right? And then at that
Hegelian dialectics, right?
It's just a dialectic, but it's not just a dialectic because it's also a theater, right?
Oh yeah.
Neither of those sound like they're real, So like that's what I'm saying with the RFK thing. Like maybe there's some infighting among groups, but I think on a long enough time scale, the system is working perfectly no matter who's in there arguing.
Yeah. Whether or not Trump is a manufactured person or his candidacy was manufactured by intelligence agencies or he's blackmailed or whatever, whether he's legitimate or not, his position, who he is now and who he has influence over, works perfectly for they them's plan. You know what I mean? So they're loving Trump right now. They love Biden. It's going great with Biden. I don't understand. People are like, they have to get rid of Biden. It's like, what are you talking about? It's going totally perfectly.
He stands so still. I mean,
if they could just have Biden versus Trump forever, it'll be the stupidest nation. It'll be a true idiocracy. But there's actual candidates out there who are like elucidating, and those are the people. They'll stop having all debates to get rid of people like Ron.
I think the older the president they get, the easier.
They don't want to raise the level of the dialogue in front of the American people, because then the American people are going to be like, why weren't you always talking like this? Like, you think we're stupid?
I think it also because naturally the president will start to replace roles and things with AI. And so it'll all just sort of become so convenient that it'll be like, oh, really? All this stuff is being done by the mechanisms of governance, right? So it's totally fine. And we won't even call it AI at that point because it'll just
Let's not forget that government and cybernetics have basically the same exact definition, and they both have to do with steering a ship. Basically. Right. It's like nautical terminology one way or the other.
Right. A well-regulated government is like a well-regulated machine. It's a well-working. It's the opposite of the bureaucratic mess that we're talking about. It's oiling.
Well, I got to sync here too, because the whole concept of cybernetics came from the Josiah Macy Foundation. The Macy conferences is where all that sort of originated. And the origin of Macy's and that red star is actually a nautical symbol.
Oh, really? God, so it's not a joke about being made in China, like I always thought.
The red star of Macy's was from a sailor's tattoo.
Oh, Macy conference star.
It's always the sea people, man.
Yeah.
Well, sea and intelligence. I mean, the Navy, I think, has always had sort of like a monopoly on intelligence because it is the largest, vast space on this planet. And even if you don't believe in outer space, right, if you think it's fake, you still have to believe in deep sea. So let's say if you counted that one out, well, now all of a sudden the Navy has complete dominion over the largest sort of unknown on our planet.
Right. Absolutely.
Admiralty law.
God, the Admiralty law, and also just the Navy in general, just controlling everything. Paranoid American, you made some pretty cool AI art. I wanted to go back to that. Where's that at? Oh, here's one. So he's been training AI on the faces of people.
Oh,
like
so
Frank
I
Zappa.
like showing the very early one. Like you can see, this is trading
gets
step
better.
600. It gets great around like 8,000, and then there's some really unbelievable magic that happens around step 14,000. But the very first under 1,000 always have these like really strange, where like you can tell what it's trying to do, but it's still off. But like the like our human brain and eyes can see what it's trying to go for.
It's like a kid learning to paint. It's beautiful. God, yeah. So what? I mean, what's this stable diffusion textual? You're doing Elizabeth Holmes even?
I already did. Yeah, she looks great actually.
Wow.
The one on the left looks good.
So I mean, do you feel like are you kind of scared that when we all end up in the Netherverse that you created all the face like this? You're
training the AI.
You volunteered this, you know what I mean? Like you put this into our ghost future.
I did, because right now, if you were to put, and if you go to like I've got Epstein, I've got Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, that's one of the early ones. I did Zappa. I mean, I'm trying to go for people that just don't exist. And I've got a strange take on this, but I feel that we've been programmed by these images of celebrities. I call every single one of them a celebrity, but we didn't have any say that they were going to be bombarded by images of Tom Hanks and Hunter Biden and Trump for our entire lives. So it almost feels like their entire characteristics and personality is public domain. It's been used against us for so long, and all of the nostalgia and all the movies and the cartoons we've watched. So I feel completely in the right to take all of that information, that programming, and turn it back out against the world and create, like American Revolutionary Hunter Biden, for example. I don't know. I think that juxtaposition is worth being put out there.
Fieri.
I mean, we just have to make sure we balance it out. I gotta send you some pictures of us, and we'll make sure that we're in the Netherverse immortal future as well. I think that's important.
Yeah, etch my name into stone.
Also, oh my God, everything open at once. Mark Zuckerberg complete in my first jiu-jitsu tournament and won some medals for the Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu team.
He's a human.
I mean, kind of. I mean, this is community standards, and this is my post. That's how I feel. I just got back on them.
Someone out there is going to be able to say that they got their ass personally beaten by Mark Zuckerberg before his AI robots like decimated their family.
That's a beautiful thing, I think. DNA project gives scientists diverse genome comparison. So I've been saying this is a problem for years, that we kind of rely on one genome, and they finally took a racist turn, and that was the way to get it taken care of. They're like, oh, actually, I mean, look at this. University of Santa Cruz, we need a really good understanding of the variations and differences between human beings. Where is it? It's like the word white. Is white going to show up? Basically, is it a white Caucasian? Anything? White male Caucasian. They were all upset. They're like, we got one dude's DNA, and everybody else's DNA is sort of, we're like guessing from the exome, but we didn't really sequence the genome. And so if we just had more genomes, we would know the subtle differences. And everyone's like, but aren't we all the same? And so for a long time, political science taught that we have the same genome up till our exome, but it's obviously not true. And it's medically necessary to find out about the differences in our genomes. But that also means perhaps hominids or other things we have gene flow in our past. And that's the thing that they've been really trying to hide for a long time. Denisovan, Neanderthal, etc.
Hasn't there been a quite coordinated effort recently to collect a huge amount of these potential samples?
Right, exactly. They've got it, and for free from all over the world. And people basically, they volunteer to get like a little tiny bit of data for 23andMe, and then they have all this data.
Well, not just free, but they're paying for it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, so let's say you give your DNA to 23andMe, and they charge you $100. Is that how that works? Do they charge you money still?
Yeah, you pay them money to do the service, right?
Oh my God.
Right. It wouldn't seem like a normal product transaction if they did it another way.
They should give you $100 for like what they're doing. Oh my God.
But see that, so this is where like that interesting aspect of like influence and just sort of salesmanship comes in. Where if I pay you $200 to submit your DNA, you're suspicious. But if I tell you you have to pay me $200, I'm asserting myself as an authority, and therefore you kind of like trust it more than if I were giving you the money. It's
I'm giving you a discount, right?
Yeah, dude. It's like when you raise the price on the little knickknack that costs you 5 cents. If you charge $20, people will buy more of them than if you charge it for $1 a piece, because there's this implied value behind it.
$100. Yep. That's crazy. Yeah. So as you start to look into the DNA, though, you start to find that there is a lot of things that are similar, but it's not actually the same. And we're even wondering more and more, like, how small is that core? Because the idea that we have sort of a shell genome that's identical, even that's starting to be questioned. The idea that Denisovans, for instance, a lot of the time we talk about monkeys coming first, and then there's gorillas. It's the opposite. Gorillas are first. So these giant gorillas, and they're bipedal. We're always supposed to believe that cavemen just started walking. No, like bipedal gorillas, and then you've got quadrupeds that come later and smaller. So everything along the way shows this sort of gene flow that's simultaneous that's happening. And I feel like that's all about to be disclosed, because how can you hide that at this point? Once this data starts to come out about the differences in people's evolutionary genome, like their ancient ancestors weren't all the same Adam and Eve. What is that going to say for people and to people?
Depends on the people. I mean, for certain people, that'll make them feel more differentiated. I mean, for me, I'm only worried about like the consciousness, the electricity, which I think is pretty much all the same sauce. So it's fascinating to know, but I think people are going to be divided into two camps,
Which camps?
People who, knowing that we don't all come from Africa or from common ancestors, some people that will make them feel more separate from each other, and give them more of a leg to stand on for segregation of any kind. And or just for you're speaking as now you could really be like speaking as a black woman, and it's like, oh well, you actually are. I never have been or not related.
You actually have a card that you can
pull out. But for people like me, it's gonna be like, fine, this is great. Like when like if we can all be peaceful and chill, we can learn all this stuff.
The problem is, macroevolution, we have no proof of microevolution for sure. So the idea that
adaptation, I mean, is there a difference between microevolution and adaptation?
Yeah, it's adaptation essentially. Okay. So, but the thing about that is, if you've got the same promoter sequences, then we are really similar, and we're much more similar than a lot of other animals. So even if we said, okay, horses and donkeys are different from each other, but they can breed a mule, that's a sterile mule because the sequences don't align. So it's unable to produce. The same thing can be said for humans, except when you mix a Denisovan and a Homo sapien, you do have all of the sequences aligned, which is crazy.
If you use CRISPR, can you make non-sterile offspring, or could you like breed like an ostrich and a fish or something? Just make
you can definitely use CRISPR to make certain genes happen and other things.
Wow.
Yeah. I have to bring up humansies if we're on this topic already with what is the name's Ivanovich or something.
God, I mean, I want to make this movie, but I feel like it'd have to be rated X. It's one of those
Ivanov
films. Yeah.
And there was a lot of claims that this was successful. I'm not sure how
I read
true a lot of those claims are, but
no, this is pretty crazy. I don't know how true it is either, but basically, Russian Soviet biologist specialized in the field of artificial insemination and the interspecific hybridization of animals. He is famous for his controversial attempt to create a human ape hybrid by inseminating 3 female chimpanzees with human sperm. Don't worry, it was the other way around, supposedly. Right? I don't know. It sounds like they're both. I
feel like they probably threw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall to see what stuck.
Yeah, I think the wall being the uterus.
Yeah, the inner wall. Yeah.
Russia. He graduated from Kharkiv in 1896, became a professor in 1907, worked as a researcher in the Askania Nova Natural Reserve. Around the start of the 20th century, he perfected artificial insemination and its practical usage for horse breeding.
Imagine that claim on your wiki page, though, that you perfected the art of artificial insemination. That's pretty high praise.
Yeah, I mean, people still have to research him for these reasons, but then you find out he went further. Like, he didn't stop there. Most controversial, create a human ape hybrid. Why would you do this? Who wants
super soldiers? This was the premise that I've always understood was that it was for Russian super soldiers to send out a slightly more intelligent gorilla onto the front lines, essentially someone that could take commands and that you could put into military training.
Right? Straight up Planet of the Apes. So Ivanov carried out a series of experiments to create human, non-human ape hybrids in French Guinea. 3 human chimpanzees were inseminated with human sperm, but he failed to create a pregnancy, allegedly. In 1929, after returning to the Soviet Union, he attempted to organize a set of experiments involving non-human ape sperm and human volunteers, but it was
Bingo.
delayed by the death of his last orangutan.
If you believe that part.
Right? So I don't know. There's a lot to this. I think there's probably more to it, but just the idea of trying to reverse the Bigfoot scenario, and also just I think he's missed the mark here by trying to combine with orangutans instead of with something a bit like if you have access to Neanderthalic DNA and you use CRISPR, you can start to refine the DNA, and that's what they're trying to do right now to get the most clean version of a Floriensis, Denisovan, Neanderthal erectus DNA, because then you can hybridize from the pure stocks and you can remove all the viruses that have been embedded along the way.
I wonder how the anti-evolution debate would go if someone could actually show, look, here's monkey DNA, and now I've made a human out of a monkey. So yes, humans can come from monkeys. I wonder if anyone could actually put those specific steps together in order to kind of prove that that would be possible.
I mean, they're definitely in the process of doing human-animal hybrids. Prometheus secretly created alien. No, where's the one I saw recently? But they definitely have been morph human DNA into mosquito DNA structure. Disabling one gene radically alters 3D chromosome structure. Researchers have uncovered a key way that humans and mosquito DNA are structurally different from one another, and then they force it into the compression sequence. So, I mean, they're doing it. They're in the process of trying to figure. I mean, so imagine then you've got an insectoid with human DNA. Where could that go? That sounds pretty fun.
Well, and I think too, what happens when you can just load all of the core materials into a machine and just let AI do all of the combinations, so that way it takes the ethical aspect out of your hands. It's like, I'm not the one that just crossed human DNA with butterfly DNA and created this mutant. That was ChatGPT's fault.
Do you have Genome Compiler? You should get Genome Compiler. I think that would be a useful program to play with. So I had BioTwist back when it was earlier, but now I think it's just way more advanced because it scrapes so much data on different sequences and in CAD file, promoter CAD files. So you're able to actually take DNA, rearrange it, take a code from one that you can index what they're doing for a lot of these things and move them into other codes. And you can send this off to have it actually made, or, just look at a virtualization of it. Genome Compiler is wild. Also, I was about to cancel my subscription to Google Colab, which lets you use their servers. So you can just cloud run their giant servers to do code. But then they're like, please don't go. We're about to introduce these new features, AI-assisted code completions with both single and multi-line suggestions, generating code from natural language, allowing you to prompt Google's advanced code models to generate code to insert into the notebook. So I think I'm going to keep it for another month because I really do want to...
FYI, they have been sending shutdown notices and account suspensions to people running Stable Diffusion in Colab, which was completely copacetic just a month or two ago. But I believe that just the explosion in popularity, they're kind of like turning that key off. It's like, well, if we can just get rid of all the Stable Diffusion users, then it opens up Colab. It's sort of that Google routes, right? It's like, we want the doctors to be able to have access to our virtualized GPUs and not people just making, hentai.
Dang it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw a wrench in your hentai gears there.
But they're doing pretty well. I mean, it makes sense because, you got a kid in India who's using his phone to attach to a giant Google server so he can write some new line of code. I want him to have access to it. But, yeah, pretty brutal. Got to use your own GTX. Neanderthals, is this one too racist? Long and broad noses on modern humans were inherited from Neanderthals. This is kind of interesting to me because it also gets back into this idea of the hominid thing, that we're all coming from different kinds of hominids. And for a month ago, I couldn't imagine seeing an article like this, but all of a sudden they're starting to talk about the genome subtlety differences between people. And they're saying, actually, this is actually a great thing. Long dismissed as being brutish, or for being brutish, our ancestors we share more with Neanderthals than we think. And it's super awesome. And you should have pride in it. I mean, I think they're modeling for the future for people to accept the idea that we're all coming from different kinds of hominids, right?
Yeah, it's very possible.
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, do you think it's more likely that they're going to continue to tell people that we're all the same, or is this information going to have to be put out there for people in some way that's digestible?
this might be used as like to further a race war, in my opinion.
Even though everyone's got the same promoter sequences and are technically from something that's the same. That's
Yeah,
the
I don't
thing.
know. Now you're over my head.
I feel like it's going to defeat the race war because once they realize that it's not possible that they're that different. There are different kinds of hominids, but clearly they're all connected by some central core thing, right?
But not
Even
a
if
common
they're
ancestor.
Even if it's aliens, is we have common ancestry, but there's differences in the kinds of species that exist. So I mean, we have no evidence of a macroevolutionary shift between these different things, and yet all of them seem to be able to breed together. So there's something weird about that. Like we do have something in common. That thing that makes it possible for us to all exist.
It's that old thing again about not knowing the rules, so you just have to draw an arbitrary line somewhere. So it's like, are we all the same or are we all different? They're like, how about there's 3 different kinds? You know, there's Mongoloids. You know, whatever it is, the 3 different kinds. I can't remember what the other 2 are called. Anyone remember this from science class?
Caucasoid.
Mongoloids. Yeah, Caucasoid and Negroid. And so that's like
They did
3,
not
but
teach
there's
me that in
all
school.
different kinds of people. Like Latinos don't get one, Egyptians don't get one, Brazilian, they look different, Portuguese, you know what I mean? Like there's all different looking people out there and they don't get their own. So it's like, we don't know if we all have common ancestry or not, and we don't want to go too crazy, so let's do 3. You know what I mean? It's like,
well,
But I
it's not
think
going to
even from-
it's not going to be a race thing. It's like it won't be that all black people or all white people come from. It's going to because there are black and white people that come from Neanderthals or Asian and
you're
white
kidding.
people that come from yeah, it's not really as the subtle. Yeah, it's not as simple as that. You have different kinds of blood. You have people that are mixed together because nobody's just one kind of person. There's no Neanderthals left. There's only Homo sapiens that have Neanderthal in them. There's only Homo sapiens that have Denisovans.
So like Rh negative or whatever. Like some people don't have the rhesus monkey.
Right. There are people that don't have Neanderthal. Right. There are people that are only Homo sapiens sapien. Right. But that's also, few and far between compared to.
But we could theoretically deconstruct and create a Neanderthal, sort of like reverse engineering it.
Right, with CRISPR, right? This is
that video you posted. Yeah, I don't know if you can share the audio for it, but this is a guy at that exact timestamp that I sent. It's at like 1:55 or something.
I'll try that again. Hold
on. But this is recreating. Yeah.
Just make them huge. Oh.
Whoa! So they were like falsettoing.
This is like based on all kinds of research, but this is what they sort of assume that a Neanderthal sounded like.
So I used to because I don't know why, but I was listening to Klaus Nomi and getting deep into falsetto recently, and Vitus as well, right? And just for some reason, falsetto seems to come up a lot recently. I don't know. Is there a sync?
I have a beautiful falsetto myself.
Yeah, based. Not just saying that because you're an Aries. Okay, I believe.
I have a low voice but a high falsetto. Interesting.
Dude, the falsettos are amazing, and they don't get enough credit. I don't think it's like super popular. Am I wrong? I don't think that there's like a big.
You got to listen to Joe York, new artist out of London. I think he's London. He's from England. He's a reggae singer, a white guy that sings in a super high, beautiful falsetto to really heavy music, and it's like totally new style. If you love falsetto, you'll love it.
You're gonna have to help me find this Joe York. Stand High Patrol. Is this it?
Nah, just go on Spotify or whatever music platform, and he owns his name.
I'll save it. Jade Discs. What was the one I saw? There's another good one. Breakthroughs. Okay, in that line, people of Americas find a female lineage from China. I was talking to Eddie about this from Taiwan, but just the idea that there is a lot of the Western Hemisphere connection to across the strait to Asia. So it's more like an Asia America than just a Eurasia, because at some point things were closer and they were tied together. Complicated ancestry tracing lineage has been believed that ancient Siberians who crossed over the land bridge in the Bering Strait linked modern Russia and Alaska were the sole ancestors of Native Americans. This accepted wisdom is now being challenged in many ways thanks to newer scientific studies like this. New science heavily points towards multiple waves of human migration from various points of Eurasia and to the Americas. Right, so across the top, and then also perhaps there were boats, but the idea that there's just an ice bridge to Alaska and then going south. The 2 migrations, one 19,000, one 26,000 years ago, which again is just glacial maximum point, whenever that actually is, but just it's tied to the glacial maximum. That there's one migration and then there's a second one that happens after that glacial migration. So 2 groups of people, one that's probably Siberian and tied to the Denisovan or the Neanderthal, and the other group which is tied to the Furiensis and to Homo sapiens in Asia, which is kind of interesting. Not necessarily that they're that different because they might have interbred before this, but it's who's to say at that point, because then you have different kinds of humans that are interacting, and at that point they are thinking they're very different from each other. Anybody?
I don't know. I see a lot of admixture talk getting suppressed usually, or people explaining it away as like racist. That maybe I'm not understanding it properly or something, but it seems like a lot of what is being discovered with DNA is being like suppressed, and they want to maintain this out of Africa theory at all costs, it sounds like.
I did see something about that. Where was that? Someone was talking about the that show, the Graham Hancock show.
Oh yeah. Ancient apocalypse, ancient fear porn.
Lost City of Atlantis rises again to fuel a dangerous myth, and they're really so they're trying to articulate this as clear as possible now. Millions have watched Netflix Ancient Apocalypse, which is just the latest interpretation of an enduring tale.
Dangerous.
But in its appeal to, quote, race science, it's more than merely controversial. So this is really interesting because it never occurred to me, and then we had to look it up, and this has been something we laughed about, but they're taking it and they're pushing it still, this idea that it's a race science thing, but also just the idea that it has anything to do with supremacy, right? Because they're not really saying that any one group of people have supremacy. It's the idea that we're all the offspring of an ancient people that were awesome, maybe supreme, but not, maybe giants have heart problems and die young. Who's to say? Or we come from psychic dwarves. Maybe the psychic dwarves were way cooler than the giants. I don't know. Like the whole idea that this is racism.
Do you think that if you give any organism ample time to evolve or adapt or whatever, change, that everything becomes like a bipedal sort of similar thing, like everything's moving towards like gray alien? Even if you start off as a monkey or a fish or a cow or whatever, if you discover the knowledge of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and all of a sudden you start developing technology and being able to keep fire lit and stuff like that, like even if you're
most
hippo, do you end up a bipedal hippo? Like, is everyone moving in the same direction regardless of what you started as?
Aren't most kinds of life insectoid? So I feel like aren't we all mostly moving towards?
Well, I'm talking about like the Egyptian pantheon, with like each one having a different animal head. Like that to me always either that like kind of gives you two different ideas of like a devolution or like an evolution, that like you can start off as a bee or whatever, but if you discover this, the Promethean spark and start having philosophical thoughts and developing technology, you end up walking around on two legs with two arms and like a bee looking head, or bee-esque features.
There's a book from 1906 from Max Heindel called the Cosmoconception. It's like a Rosicrucian sort of book, and I don't know if I agree with this one, but it's a really interesting concept because he makes an argument that it's not that like a dog is going to become an actual human at some point, but they will, according to that book, they will reach that same type of consciousness that humans have now, but they might reach it in their little dog body, so they don't necessarily lose all of their fur and become bipedal and start walking around. But that
I don't buy it.
Well, there's this concept
dogs are going to start narrowing themselves. What is
that a wild animal has sort of like a collective consciousness with all wild animals of that species, but any kind of domesticated animal that's been closely tied to humans, it's almost like there's this conscious osmosis that like the human mindset kind of rubs off on domesticated animals. That's why your dog starts to actually act more like a human.
It could be the human mindset. It could also just be prosperity and peace, and not having to fight for your next meal, and not to get killed while you're sleeping that night. Just like a little time to chill out and catch your breath, and everything starts all of a sudden becoming
maybe. Or I could say we're just.
I think that could be the same thing, right? That can kind of be the same thing. That peace and prosperity gives you room for consciousness to like stretch out.
Yeah, room for generosity. I would say there's no room for generosity in the animal kingdom. It doesn't seem.
Crabification. So Popular Mechanics article from years ago, but they're like, hey, what's up with all this crabification? It seems weird that so many things seem to become crabs that have no common ancestry.
That's interesting. Because I wanted to also mention the flip side of just as an idea, I'm not suggesting this is a theory, but devolution, where everything started off as a highly evolved species, like an Egyptian god with literally like dog features. And then just through devolution and losing control of your intellect and your senses and technology, you devolve to you're actually walking on all fours and eating off the ground like a dog. It's just an idea. I mean, neither one's a theory. It's just everyone always thinks about like going like, what are we becoming? But it's like maybe we started as something better and now we're turning into monkeys, like going the wrong
Or
direction.
decapods.
I mean, that tracks with the fact that like the deeper we dig, the more sophisticated artifacts we find and the more sophisticated building techniques we find too.
It could be
Right.
like a cycle, like a breath, where you become gray aliens and you go right back down to crabs.
Crabification is real. I mean,
Crab people.
crab people. It's my big
Love
fear.
crabs.
How about the jade discs, the ancient wonder of Chinese technology? People used to wear jade discs around their necks, like life dog tags, basically. And the ancient Chinese or Tartarians had these statues of like Nephilim, these huge, elongated green jade characters that were made. But also, they are shown wearing jade discs. And so the question is, were jade discs that we've seen for the last 1,000 years based on older jade discs, which were used for something? And looking at the oldest jade discs, people think actually there might have been, you could use them to store data because it's a kind of precious glassy stone. Energy crystal line can be stored and grown with jade. Jade's also found in really weird volcanic places. There's two kinds of jade, jadeite and nephrite, right? And so one's really jade and the other's this greener stone that people are more familiar with, I think is prettier, but that's not the real jade. So getting back to the actual jadeite. But yeah, there's some power theoretically. Do you have any thoughts on like ancient technology discs, or just the fact that they had these discs around their necks that they used to wear?
I love the concept of psychometry, which is where like vibrations get stored into objects, and then you can like the psychometrics. There it is, which is basically I guess like a hard drive, or almost like the way that you would burn like an acetate record, like in reverse. The same way that you would cut that acetate record, you could almost imagine that happening with just regular vibrations on one of these jade discs.
Charles Darwin was the inspiration behind Sir Francis Galton, a scientist who advanced the development of psychometrics. In 1859, Darwin published Origin of Species. Darwin described the role of natural selection and the emergence over time of different populations of species of plants. The book showed how individuals, members of species, differ amongst themselves and how they possess characteristics that are more or less adapted to their environment. Galton wrote a book, Hereditous Genius. These ideas stimulated Galton's interest in the study of human beings and how they differ from one another, and more importantly, how to measure those differences.
And Galton actually ties into that book I mentioned before. Sorry, go ahead.
People in the chat are saying they're called Dropa stones or Dropa stones, the jade discs.
Dropa stones.
Yeah. A couple people said that in the chat.
Are purportedly pseudo-archaeological artifacts claimed to be a series of 12,000-year-old granite discs. Still sounds cool, with inscribed markings that represent an account of extraterrestrial crash landings on Earth. Let me look at
Similar, but not the same. Huh?
Still, I'll take it. Let's see. Granite stones, drip stones. Cool. Is it real? Let's find out. Let's go back to the story. So, tale, according to what may be the earliest version of the tale, which appeared in 1962 in July on the German magazine Das Vegetarische Universum. In the 1937 archaeological expedition in the Bayer Har Mountain, led by Chi Pu-te, found 716 granite discs with tiny hieroglyph-like markings dated back 12,000 years before present. Star maps and mummies with the granite, with thin bodies and usually large heads, were also present at the site. After more than 2 decades of work at the Academy of Prehistory in Beijing, Chinese archaeologists and linguists managed to translate the markings and conclude that the discs had been carved by extraterrestrials in the aftermath of their crash in the Sino-Tibetan border region. These conclusions were published by Sum Nui in an academic journal, but were met with ridicule. Sum left for Japan in self-imposed exile and died shortly after. The discs are sometimes claimed to measure up to 1 foot in diameter and carry 2 grooves in the form of a double spiral originating from a hole in the center, with hieroglyphs inscribed with the grooves and visible with a magnifying glass. In 1966, the story was republished by Vyacheslav Zaitsev in the Soviet magazine Sputnik. Zaitsev added that several discs had been shipped to Moscow on request of Soviet researchers who discovered that they contained large amounts of cobalt and other metals. That they behaved as electrical conductors, and that they produced a humming sound when placed on a special turntable. Supposedly in 1974, Austrian engineer Ernst Wegener Wegener, visited the Bonpo Museum in Shanxi, where he saw 2 of the Dropa stones. It is said that he inquired about the disc but received no information, although he was allowed to take one in his hands and photograph them up close. By 94, these discs could no longer be found. Interesting.
Interesting. It looks cool.
Yeah, man. Well, that's kind of on the idea. So if the jade stones are emulating Dropa stones or something, right? Pretty crazy. But no way to investigate them. Sorry, fam. I'd like to know more.
They no longer exist, right? Ever since Russia got their hands on them in the 60s, poof.
Yeah, move along. Unraveling the Secrets of Arkham. I don't know if that's how you say Arkham Asylum is what I come to immediately think of. But the Russian Stonehenge. You guys know about the Russian Stonehenge?
Nope.
Yeah, so there's this thing. And it's what? 2.3 kilometers east of the village. And how big is it? It's pretty big. It's like a decent size. Like I think it's like, I forgot if it's 20 kilometers or something, but it's not as small as it looks. There's a building there, so maybe it's like 2.3 kilometers, I guess. But then a lot of the stones were removed, and they started digging, and they found all this underground area there. But like someone physically destroyed everything, so there's nothing left above the ground essentially.
Wow.
And then there's just a little bit of foundation, which is left. It used to be, hyper advanced, had all this technology. Up here in the steppes.
It's amazing. Man, I wish we had a more connection to man-made structures like that and less of like skyscrapers and cities.
Yeah, they're spiraling. It's right. It just seems like more
awesome.
Practical in a lot of ways too.
It just looks nicer. I mean,
And where is
like
this supposed
the
to be?
new Apple, the Apple campus.
It's
no?
an Apple logo, totally.
And this is up in the stack.
Pac-Man.
Yeah, it's the Ural Mountains, right? Stupid robot.
I had a feeling.
In the southern.
This runs into their narrative of like ancient aliens. They love this narrative, but we know who else originated in the steppe were the Indo-Europeans.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's a good point. Their story is usually that aliens somehow contacted them, but this is more like they have sacred architecture, that maybe they're the people that were talking to people from the sky or something like that.
I always interpret sky people as people that understood the sky.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The cosmic model of the city.
Yeah.
So they're looking at the sky and they're building it, in reflection of what they see above them,
Right.
Seems pretty reasonable.
That's a good point. I mean, what would the actual people from the sky be looking at? They wouldn't be seeing constellations. We'd seeing Earth.
Dwelling temple,
building
social
things that look
center.
like oceans and continents and stuff, or I don't know.
Credited by the Proto-Indo-Iranian speakers of the Sintasha culture. Some researchers propose that the culture represents the Proto-Indo-Iranians prior to their division into various groups and subsequent migration to Central Asia, and perhaps even eventually into Persia, Eurasia.
So that's the funny thing. So from the steppe, which is what, like 4,000 BC, 5,000 BC, maybe further back, it's got to be aliens. But just to get a little weird, Bach Saga, right? It's like, okay, we don't want to talk about where anyone really came from before that. We're suppressing those themes, so it was aliens.
Yeah, so that's interesting even of itself. What's the narrative?
Because the Bach Saga claims that when they first left Atlantis, they headed that way. They ended up I'm kind of trying to match up the Bach Saga with like the story of the Canaanites. Honestly, It's quite coincidental on many levels.
What about like mythical cryptozoologies? They're kind of weird. I mean, the idea in the Bach Saga, it seems like
is
there
like allegorical?
Well,
because
I don't know, because you have dragons, you have giant birds, you have big animals.
Yeah, well, dragons, okay, but if we look at like the Phoenician alphabet, we start looking at like the roots of these words, like Dracon, Dracon. It comes from something earlier, but it's always referenced as like the one with the deathly sight or the one with the sight. And so to me, I'm connecting that to serpent symbolism everywhere, like druids, the ones with the sight, the ones who see, the shamans, the mystical people, the ones that brought the magic, which is the story of all these shining ones, no matter what culture you look at.
Fossil winged serpent, new species of ancient snake. I mean, they're finding all kinds of these connections between birds and dinosaurs, right? The idea that dinosaurs are really just dragons. I mean, right?
I don't know. If we're looking at ancient bird symbolism and saying this is what used to exist, I don't know. I mean, because it's like even the people with the snake heads, like that was a symbol of royalty. Once again, that was the symbol of those who could see, right? The Naga of Egypt too. Same with the Druids. It's all this serpent symbolism of like the wisdom of the wisdom of the universe, right? Because the snake sheds its skin. So it's
Also,
like
yeah,
representative
Enel
of the
and
cycles of the universe and things like that.
totally, and like Enel and Enki, the
Yeah,
Sumerian legend. One is
Brotherhood of the Serpent.
I forget which one's a good one. I guess Enel, Enki.
Neither of them. Enki,
Oh, well,
yeah,
whatever.
Enki's the more
Is
the Luciferian.
right, and he's a winged serpent. He's represented as a winged serpent also, and a lot of people, not a lot of people, but specifically Esoteric Eddie. I listened to an interview with him where he was drawing a parallel between that and the serpent in the garden, bringing the
Absolutely.
enlightenment. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the story of the Enuma Elish and the tale of Adapa, all the Sumerian cuneiform stories mimic the Old Testament,
Yeah.
especially the Garden of Eden story, which is great because when you look at those old stories, they're like there were kingdoms in those days, and it's like, wait a minute, I thought Adam and Eve. Wait, what's going on? So it's like, yeah, we had this whole upper class, like parentage, basically going on back then. Before, like this story of Adam and Eve to me sounds like the beginning of the slave race.
Absolutely, 1,000%. That's how I always thought of it. You know, just graze on this grass. Don't worry about it. Don't think too
Well,
much.
And was it alien? So
But
here's the
not.
great
But I
thing.
wouldn't say. Sorry. Go ahead.
What you have on the screen right now is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, because like the one on the right, that's a perfect like animation drawing or whatever of Maharabi, which was a human king from Babylon. But if you put Maharabi's paintings next to any of the Anunnaki, it's the same friggin' people.
Yeah.
So why would they represent men and gods exactly the same way, right? Adorn the same way.
I feel like at least in the details in Genesis that it doesn't really sound like the creation of a slave race, but more like pets or children that never grow into adults. Like sort of like a sentimental idea of like, what if we could have kids and never grow up? Wouldn't that be like perfect, you know? And because there was no labor in the Garden of Eden, it was literally just enjoyment, and water was misting up from the ground, and you're just eating the fruits, and
Right.
there was no labor taking place. So far as we know, labor began when the exodus from the garden, not the exodus, when expelled from the garden, and then God said you have to go toil the fields now. You know, it does sound like
now it sounds like the womb.
yeah,
Like,
it does
now
sound like
labor happens.
yeah,
Get out there.
it does, and also that's when the pain of labor came onto women, and
Right.
or what I think that's a mistranslation. I think it's what it's really saying is now you have to create your own offspring as opposed to us just popping new people into the garden or whatever. You know,
Well, this
creating.
is bypassing the story of Lilith, where Lilith was in the Garden of Eden first and got kicked out of the Garden of Eden because she wanted to be on top, essentially.
Well, it wasn't her fault. She was made not from a rib, right? She was Adam's equal or better.
Correct. Yeah, she was made out of the same clay as opposed to coming from Adam, but she also kind of was like a strong, independent woman, which I guess God nor Adam appreciated that very much. And all of the I guess Adam was like, I don't want to have relations with you, so she would have to kind of take him during the night. And this is supposed to be where all cryptids and demons and like monsters and vampires, they all came as the offspring of Lilith trying to copulate with Adam against his own will. And then eventually she gets kicked out. They bring Eve in, and then they can have human babies all of a sudden.
What was Lilith made out of again? I mean,
The same clay as Adam,
Okay.
according to one story.
Right. Whereas Eve is a rib, right?
But it's also kind of great. You get both of the same clay, and then their offspring are demons.
Yeah.
well, it does. I mean, the reason I asked it is it almost seems like Lilith would be just by the structure of the story that Lilith is like a different kind of creation or a different species than Adam. And like,
Well, there's the joke, the Gnostic joke, right? Where like Adam is lonely and God's like, all right, well, I'll make you a woman. The best woman ever created be Lilith. He's like, wait, how much is that going to cost me? It's like, well, you know, an arm and a leg. It's like, well, what can I get for a rib? And then he gets Eve.
Right. Well, it seems that the reason that Eve wasn't created out of the mud, you know, there must have been some strategy behind that, you know. So if Adam wasn't taking to Lilith, which probably means that they weren't able to conceive, you know, then maybe it's like, well, then inbreeding it is, you know, we weren't able to make a non-sterile mule, so now we're just gonna go with horses. So just took a rib out of Adam, made another human out of that, and then just let them reproduce with each other.
I mean, this is interesting because again, with the Harry Mary idea, and that maybe Lilith is somewhat like first off, you've got the mark of Cain, that maybe Cain is of the serpent, right? And then the other idea is that maybe one of the children, there are other children out there because there are families besides Eve's family. So the Harry Mary kind of, it seems interesting to me. This connects to this idea of hominids or different kinds of humans, because from the very beginning, you're talking about there being different mothers and, you know, maybe even different fathers if Cain is actually the son of Lucifer or the snake, whatever the snake is, because the Bible doesn't actually call the snake Lucifer, it just says the most cunning beast of the field.
Which to me is I mean, yeah, I'm definitely biased here, but like I still think they're talking about like old history stories, prehistoric stories of different groups that they didn't like were called demons and things like that, you know?
Does the box saga have some on serpents? What can you think of about serpents and snakes?
Oh yeah, dude, the ring, the Ouroboros supposedly, I mean, they claim that it comes from the box saga because it's the ring of Odin. Odin is a ring. Odin is everything. But it's the Ouroboros being the perfect cycle.
You had it close. O-U-R.
It's a weird one.
Close enough.
It's on the front of the box saga's book too.
Dang it. Snake eating tail.
It's like the Midgard serpent from the Norse.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It was like not gonna let me. They're like, we know what you're trying to do, and we're just gonna mess with you now until you.
Whenever I see that image result that it showed for the Wikipedia, man, that's the same cover art that Tex Mars used for Codex Magica. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Codex Magica. It was like one of the first sort of like, it was like pre-internet memes, but it was like memes put into a book almost.
Really?
It's a huge book. It's like 700 pages. It's huge. Like you could knock somebody out with it. Yeah. That's exactly what's in it. It's just all sorts of hand symbolism and pagan sort of imagery. And
base. Yeah, I gotta get a copy of that. That looks legit. Oh man, I think I saw it on archive.org. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. This is it right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were just a second ago. This was Ouroboros stuff. Yeah. So what's up with the Ouroboros, and also from the box saga perspective?
Well, from the box saga perspective, it kind of like it starts with, you know, very direct definitions, but then it goes in more to the mystical as you go along, you know. But it starts with their weird fertility processes.
You guys remember The Greedy Python by Eric Carle? Did they make you read that in school?
Maybe.
Oh my god! Once upon a time, there was the Ouroboros, and he ate his own tail. Long story short, like he first eats the world. First he eats the world and the sun and everything, right? And then after he eats the world, then there's nothing left. Then he eats the sun. Then he eats himself, right?
I think it's just a description of the cycle of life and reality. And snakes are the only animal you can draw eating itself with any kind of ease. You know? So
they're not showing. You got to see the part where he eats his own tail. Then you'll see what I'm saying. But yeah, basically,
like tried to draw a dog eating.
There's no way they didn't want kids to know about this is the box saga for kids. I'm convinced.
No shit, really.
That's awesome.
But wait, sorry.
That's what all nature and reality does. It's self-consumptive and like cycles end and like it consuming itself and then starting anew. So I just always assumed they did it with a snake because like good luck drawing it with a bird or anything else.
And this is kind of what I talk about with like the old way versus the new way, because the old way is that self-consumptive idea. And I think that this is what the box saga and other old stories kind of talk about, that this idea of humanity being very pagan, very heathen, very naturalistic, and like abiding by what they've been given by nature and nothing more. Whereas like the feud is where this like new idea comes in. Like we can build things, we can make things easier, we can change it. And it's like, no, this isn't the way I grew up. It's like that. It's like that typical story you see in Hollywood where the kid doesn't agree with the parent and runs away to the world, and his own ideas fail out in the world. So he has to slowly come back. But while he's been gone, the parent has to like realize the problems in his own ways. And then of course it's this synergistic alchemy where they have to create a third way, right?
Intact, if Enki and his crew made us slaves, proves there is no God, which is scary. No, I disagree. I don't think it does at all.
You can't prove there is no God.
Right.
No, so this is, you got to take it away from the religious content. You got to take these stories back.
Even if you, before we take it away, imagine, I was going to say L. Ron Hubbard, because you can always, or Mormonism, because you can always have a level. There could be like someone became a super thing. All right, keep going.
There's a name for the fallacy. It's like scale fallacy or something, you know? It's like, humans could never think of this technology in their own. It was given to them by aliens. So it's like, all right, then the system's just bigger bigger than the Earth. So now you just have a bigger system that operates the same. Who taught the aliens? Oh, someone from an even bigger system. It doesn't change anything. Originally, somebody thought of something themselves.
Yeah, ancient aliens instead of recent Tartarians. That's racist, I think, the ancient aliens thing. We the people. But also a fabulous comment from Stephen Kalen. Thank you for the $4.99. We love you, people. Thank you. And pet snakes, owls eat mice bred to be fine-boned, not hairy. Just like our more robust ancestors bred us to be fed to Quetzalcoatl, but then we escaped. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe that's also part of the thing. A lot of things have changed. I just saw a video on how humans have bad teeth now. We didn't used to. About a couple hundred years ago, it was pretty common to have pretty good teeth. And then our diet started to change. And the diet, of course, is why we have bad. We're not chewing things properly. We're not eating the vegetable matter and the roughage and everything.
Wrong pH water is a huge.
Yeah.
My favorite quote is store-bought foods means store-bought teeth.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, because you look around the third and fourth world and like in Polynesia, and you have amazing teeth. You'll be like impressed with how much better their teeth are than people that have dentistry. I don't know. So there's that. The other thing, we're getting shorter. Humans have systematically killed off tall people in military. People also die because they have heart conditions, etc. But we've lost about a foot. If you look at anthropologically, we were much taller before the Neolithic period. During the Paleolithic period, we were more nomadic. Nomadic people were taller, and we lived decades longer. It looks like we're starting to prove when we were saying, oh, well, society was making you live so long. No, looks like you're actually dying much younger now. And that's even on a weird level, because we're looking at the boomers, and the boomers are dying a decade before the greatest generation. Their parents lived much longer than they're living. So we're all seeing it happen so quickly.
Well, there's one of my favorite pedantic and technical debates about like human life expectancy, because that number gets thrown around so often, but no one ever considers that it's because they factor in all the world wars. So if you send off your children to be killed, or if there's a high infant mortality rate, it drops that. So it's like, the Native Americans are dying at age 30, or if the cavemen made it to 40, they were considered an elder. Well, that's only if you include all of the other like famines and like pestilence and things that were affecting the overall, life expectancy.
Well, that's another thing, because Darwin's whole theory is, the sticker they put over the hole in the boat is that when things start to die, when there's a huge mutation, everything's dying rapidly, more than it's reproducing, then mutation kicks off really fast, right? So if you can put people into a sense of fear and control, then you could really quickly turn up evolution. Because all of a sudden, biologically, you realize, this isn't working.
Are we talking flex seal?
That's the flex on the boat. That's what I mean. I don't think it's a really good theory. I
love your way of reasoning. So you're saying the controller faction is deliberately making everyone go insane just because they want to increase the mutation factor, in the population.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
In their cattle.
Because they got what they got, and they want to see what else they can get. It seems kind of reasonable.
Yeah, in terms of human creativity without genetics, also genetics, it's certainly true. I'm sure you know about Bruce Lipton, biology of belief, and the whole interrelationship between belief systems and genetics, apparently, or epigenetics. So at least from that point of view, it could certainly make sense. I don't think you would have to use stress for it, but I'm pretty sure it would work too. It works for sure. People are adapting for sure.
Right. That's a major cause of cancer, people say. I'm not a doctor, of course, but, this is a big thought that the Chinese medicine has, that, I've heard people say, oh, someone has cancer. When did you have stress? 3 or 4 years ago, 7 years? Because there's between 2 to 7 years, probably some stress happened in your life that caused it. Like, it's just kind of an accepted belief all the time in Chinese medicine, because your consciousness and your body is trying to mutiny in order to survive. It thinks it's not doing well with the way the rest of the body's in homeostasis.
So, of course, I wanted to put it positively in terms of that even through a stressful situation, if one is, let's say, insightful about it, it can be adapted in a way that you can actually thrive, even in a situation that for the general populace would be more difficult to not be stressed in, let's say. Yeah. But you all guys seems to be doing a good job the way I'm looking at y'all. So
I have to point out, since we brought up stress, we brought up cancer, we were talking about a bunch of stuff, but the research that was published by Abram Hoffer in the late 90s and early 2000s mentions that there is a direct correlation between people that have high levels of adrenochrome that acts as almost an anti-cancer agent. That he even goes one step farther, and he kind of postulates that people that survive things like the Black Plague and other like major pandemics, they might have had more adrenochrome in their system, and it also coincides with, you know, I guess these right brain kind of creative musicians, sort of like all these different, you know, non like left brain thinkers, they tend to have these higher levels of that particular substance in their blood, which might make them sort of more like biologically apt to overcome, I guess, this stress, or at least the underlying premise is that they know how to redirect, and they know how their bodies know how to convert that stress and break it down into its chemical components, therefore creating a higher level of adrenochrome. But it's really just your body is way better at converting stress and breaking it down and purging it out like toxins.
So would we be also possibly better at like seeing through bullshit? Because I don't know, you just made me think maybe this is why they're all taking our adrenochrome. Not to live forever, but to keep us from like, I don't know. It's kind of like the
keep us numb. I think you look at Macaulay
right?
Culkin after is like 17 and you're like, oh man, stop taking drugs, you know? That's like but no, I mean, if you're getting your adrenochrome sucked out of you, and if you have also like if you take certain kinds of drugs which make you use it up at a festival or something like that, and then you're just down, like you have less melatonins in your system, I mean, then I think you're like a lot of people that have dietary dysfunction or some sort of lead in their water or whatever the situation that's causing. A lot of people are I don't know how to say it, you know, like they're numb. There's a certain kind of numbness to receptivity.
Absolutely.
I mean, I really like the theory. It just would be interesting to also have the values for things like, I don't know, DMT and MAO and all of that, and whether they maybe are also at different levels. So maybe that's not the singular factor, but certainly sounds fascinating.
For sure. I mean, so also, you know, they're getting ready for the apocalypse. You've seen the seed banks, Bill Gates seed banks, but they're building the animal frozen zoo next, right? I mean, I'm sure they've had these before, but this is supposed to be better, and it's got like smart computers. I don't know, like the lights turn on automatically when you go inside, but it's going to have a bunch of frozen eggs for all different, and sperm for all different kinds of animals for when they can't live anymore, and they're prepared. That way you don't have any more extinctions of your favorite animals. That's kind of the goal. And in the process, this is the same lab that was working to recreate other animals, but they're working in conjunction with the San Diego Zoo. So the San Diego Zoo is, you know, taking samples of all of the animals at the zoo to save them to make clones.
I'm curious. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but can you actually cryo-freeze reproductive cells and not have to use just like straight up like the same way that you would extract the genetics from like a tissue sample, right? Could they actually like unfreeze sperm and unfreeze an egg and use that without any other sort of side effects, or are they at some level doing genetic manipulation?
Both. So you can theoretically, I mean, not theoretically, you can freeze eggs and sperm in ways that don't pierce the cell wall. And there's ways also to remove the cell wall from an egg and then replace the cell wall. But the ideal solution is to take the DNA, store it in a virus, and then inject that into a new thing, so that you would just essentially genetically modify something with and replacing all of the former DNA data with the new DNA data, and starting a new egg with that data, because that data could be stored digitally, and so it's safer. You don't have to worry about any sort of breakdown, and you can duplicate it and back it up. But you can definitely weaken the cell wall so that it's not there as much and it doesn't pierce when it freezes. So they have done that. How you can store that for how many centuries or something like that, that's a question. But a lot of that research was done for freezing heads of humans, right, in the 80s and 90s, trying to figure out ways that you can
the Walt Disney
antifreeze,
Alcor.
right? Well, yeah, and that's another question. Did Disney have certain kinds of antifreeze that we didn't even realize at the time? But you can chemically remove cell walls so that they last. But yeah, the idea of they cloned the first endangered species, this ferret, a black-footed duplicated from the genes of an animal that died over 30 years ago. So this is the beginning. You know, we're going to see it here first. This is simple, but it's already, this is over 2 years ago, right, that they did the ferret. So they're in the process of doing this to tons of different species. And it's one thing for species that have been alive in the last 100 years, but the dodo and the mastodon, that's the one that they're really, once they get this all figured out.
Sorry, but to me, it's kind of really seems it's pretty clear that this is just some kind of cover-up PR for all kinds of other things they are funding. Because I mean,
Right.
if I need more ferrets, I breed them, you know. And
Right.
how many issues do I want to solve before I want to get back the mastodon or whatever? I'm like, what kind of issue?
I mean, this
Is
guy's
this?
cute though, right? This cute little pony. They deep free, a 40-year-old piece of tissue. They proved you can do it. Here you go, Thomas. And then it's adorable. I think that's the cover up is adorable, Raph.
Oh, for sure, certainly is. Dolly the sheep, as someone in chat wrote, which is where it officially started, right?
Yeah, Dolly's interesting. Just the name Dolly too, like a puppet for something.
Alexander Graham Bell also did genetic experiments with sheep back in the day. He found that sheep that had extra nipples would tend to produce more, I believe.
Garbage truck
Sidney
with Mercury?
Gottlieb too. Sidney Gottlieb also raised sheep and did genetic experiments.
Something weird about messing with sheep, for sure. Goats. They should do goats. I like the goat silk. Somehow that seems like being just admitting what you're doing. Like use goats.
This is where they got what you were looking for, Andreas. No, the Mercury.
Yeah, you heard about this?
No,
there was a
someone
garbage.
gotta go collect.
There was a garbage truck that spread waste from Martinez in California earlier. Was it today? I think it was today. It might have been yesterday. Is it today? Yesterday. And it was just all over the place. And then so it was a dump truck, and then it drove over itself, and then it just brought mercury out into the streets. And so there's this huge biohazard they're trying to clean up. They're trying to figure out what the heck happened in Contra Costa County, which is Bohemian Grove County, also where what's his name? What's his name? The Shulgin, the drug creator, the research chemical creator, and where the like para DEA lab where they allowed for research chemicals to develop like DOM, which became SDP, like the bad brown acid at Woodstock, developed in Contra Costa County. So kind of crazy. And then the story is like, where did what were they bringing that had mercury in it? They didn't really. Did they say what the reason was? I don't remember seeing the reason. Just that it was brought right by the Amtrak. So a lot of people that are constantly going around that area. So it's like in a very pedestrian part of Martinez.
If it's a garbage truck, doesn't that just mean that somebody disposed of the mercury wrong?
I guess. I mean, it seems weird to me, but that's also. I mean, why would you
throw away mercury? Mercury doesn't go bad. It's actually kind of expensive. So why would you throw it away to begin with?
It seems really weird. And then also, how did the garbage truck spill it and like make this huge mess?
Well, that would be easy. I mean, it would just droplets would bounce out, I guess, or something. I mean, garbage trucks open and close. That was funny. It's funny that story came up because just earlier today, I was scrolling through Instagram and then the little stories that go by or whatever, like the reels. One of them was a guy was vacuuming his carpet and there was like tons of beads of mercury in there. And he's like, I've never spilled mercury in my house. Like once I started vacuuming the shag carpet, like all these balls of mercury are just coming up.
What?
Could this be a cover up for a T1000 outbreak?
Oh gosh,
Jeez.
Nanobots, they're here.
Not okay.
Imagine. Mercury nanobots.
Yeah, I mean the liquid Terminator.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be. I mean, the idea of nanobots, like this is a thing that exists, ferrofluidic nanobots. But my first thought was just also the word mercury, just because mercury, like the messenger, like what is this?
Oh.
Whenever they have they can publicly say something, no one's nearby, so it's not affecting a lot of people outside the world. But we're all hearing about mercury was found, right? So who's the messenger in Contra Costa County?
Yeah,
Hermes,
the Quicksilver messenger service,
right? Yeah,
back to
that outfit too for a news person, very witchy. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It all comes together. Mercury with we had the jade and then the emerald tablets and Hermes and Mercury and being the same and all that stuff.
I don't know if anyone's got thoughts on Turkey, the election of Turkey. How about Clone High? Go to that.
More interesting in Pakistan. You see what happened in Pakistan?
Yeah, what was going on? They arrested Imran Khan.
Yeah, and then after they did that, protesters lit the presidential palace on fire or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pakistan's wild right now. So what's going on? So there's is there an
Imran
election
Khan was
coming
a
up?
puppet. He was a puppet, so it's pretty interesting that he's getting arrested. I think he wasn't.
Well, because they built up Pakistan's CIA government after they realized there was so much money that was coming in from private hands in other parts of the Middle East, right? Like, so they're like, okay, well, we really need to own Pakistan. And the U.S. has been pushing to control Pakistan for like the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Pakistan likes that very much. So is that what the deal is? Imran Khan is a puppet for?
That was my impression of him. I'm not like a Pakistan expert or anything, but it's interested that if he wasn't a puppet, he was very welcome on the world stage. You know, he wasn't getting like the Donald Trump treatment ever or anything like that. He's a pretty famous guy. I mean, I'm sure everyone's corrupt, but you know, it's more interesting who gets busted than who's corrupt, because I mean, everyone's corrupt.
Right. I swear this is more related to a reality than you'd think, but Clone High, does anyone remember that show? Way back in the 1980s, secret government employees dug up famous guys and ladies and made amusing genetic copies. And now those clones are sexy teens, and they're going to make it if they try. Learning, loving, sharing, and it's time to watch Clone High if you've not seen it. Here's the sequel series. They're deep freezed. They're deep frozen, right? They're the cryogenically frozen clones, and they're bringing them back so that they can lead this next generation, which is without proper Illuminati guidance. So they're hoping that these the fearless leaders, the dudes in black suits, are hoping that these unfrozen celebrity, what is it, frozen history people, they're going to save the world. They're going to lead them to the New World Order, rather.
So this is new?
Yeah, this is new.
They made a sequel or whatever?
A sequel series on HBO Max, which is where they do the South Park, so it might be
Who are the new historical figures?
It's the same people, I think.
Okay.
Gandhi might be trans now, it looks like, in that picture.
Yeah,
I could be
was gonna
wrong.
say, yeah.
And then the Lego movie people made it. And I feel like they put a lot of deep stuff in the Lego movie. Like, even though it was shallow, it was deep symbolic levels. I don't know. I'm looking forward to this and seeing, because again, I think it's on that trend of they're trying to replace all of the mainstream symbols. You know, I don't think people are going to care. Like, it's like Nikes are old now. Batman's about to be public domain. You saw that?
Mm-hmm.
When Batman's public domain, what happens to Batman? People stop caring about Batman because they can't sell him anymore, right? That's what's they're gonna replace maybe the newest version of Batman. They can keep that.
Can they not just hyphenate it and be like, we're DC, we have $1 billion. Guess what? We're still making the Batman movie, and you're not.
We've just made a new universe. Now there's the new 53.
They're gonna have to do stuff to make it very different than the old Batman, or else they're not gonna care to keep it. So the whole thing, anything we value, they're about to get rid of because there's no trademarks on it. So there's no reason to protect the intellectual property.
Do you guys remember in the 90s, Marvel started doing like all of their popular heroes, but 2099? So there was like a Spider-Man 2099 and 2099. I think that was kind of like an effort into this. There was also right around the death of Superman, when Bane kills him, he kind of comes back as like multiple Supermen.
Doomsday, you mean?
Doomsday, yeah.
Yeah, 2099 was a great idea. I like that. I always liked Marvel 1699. Is that the one? 1602? Remember that? So it was like Marvel in 1602.
Isn't that the year of the inception for the Dutch East India Company or something like that?
Is it? It's beyond. It's not 1619. Let's see. Dutch East Indies Company. Let's use the wiki.
Oh, that'll blow my mind if this
1602. 1602.
Holy shit!
And why? Because there is this famous game called AD 1602, or in German Anno 1602. Right. And I was always wondering, why did they pick that date? Why did they pick that date? I don't understand. And then finally I saw that article. I was like, okay, this is the new world where basically it's a great game, but you get indoctrinated into the idea that you have a completely new and empty North America, whatever, with a few indigenous, and certainly no pre-existing Tartarian buildings anywhere, you know, which we could see on the maps. And so
you got Daredevil. I forget who everybody is, but it's, you know, it's all the Marvel characters.
Thor.
It's amazing. Yeah, is that Thor? Yeah, it's amazing.
So.
Thor as the Scandinavian native. Neil Gaiman did this. You got to get it. It's really important.
Dude, that's Neil Gaiman. Oh man, yeah, it's got to be riddled with symbolism.
Yeah, he did the Sandman. It's very important. I recommend it strongly. I know we're
getting Daredevil with the
Daredevil. It was definitely Daredevil.
Who were the other ones? Just out of curiosity, I wasn't even trying to figure it out.
There's Thor, Daredevil. I feel like this is Xavier. Could that be Xavier?
Maybe Doctor Strange even.
Well, yeah, it's Marvel, not DC.
Who's on the right there then?
Hawkeye.
That's what I was gonna think.
Maybe it's the Hulk.
Looks like Robin Hood.
Hulking out yet.
God, I forget. Yeah.
What
if
about
you-
the girl? Who's the girl? Is that Jean Grey or?
Probably
Doesn't look like
no.
So it says
Black
Matthew
Widow?
Murdoch, Virginia Dare,
I don't know who that
Rojas,
is.
Sir Nick Fury. That's who the guy with the patches. That's Nick Fury.
and then
And John Gray.
John Gray.
John Grey.
So these are so it's kind of elseworldy, you know what I mean?
Like
But
Jean Grey, and she's trans.
Yeah,
and
it's a
1602?
male version of
Okay,
Jean Grey,
wow.
John Gray.
yeah,
And who's the girl character? I'm not familiar with that Marvel character.
It says Virginia Dare, who was actually an actual person.
colonist.
Oh,
Yeah, see?
okay, not a mutant. Got it.
Yeah, it's
All
pretty good. Well, we don't know that, but Turkish election, sleep apnea can kill your brain. Make sure you breathe. Tabloid apologizes to Prince Harry on first day of new phone hacking trial. FBI shape. Let's get to the Infowars one. AI generate content. Most people are going to believe it. Nikola Tesla's writings, machine learning. Tarot's receiver, meaning of the mind's AI. Any of this stuff? Where was the one I was going to show you? Lost of Atlantis, Bigfoot. We talked about that. Ex-Russian space boss finds no proof of American landing on the moon. I mean, they're pretty much at this point where are they going to say that?
So what
soon?
about the reflector? That one is the one that always comes up the most often as proof that we were there. Although you could technically have put that there without humans being there, but the moon reflector that you can shine a powerful enough laser on or a light and actually get the.
Could be wrong.
Mineral deposits would do that, reflect like that too. Could be like salt.
Yeah.
Salt reflects off the earth. It looks like lights.
I'd like to see more proof. I don't know.
Yeah.
No deal. The CIA signature. CIA may have solicited a signature for a letter undermining Hunter Biden's story. Report finds top House investigative committees have found the evidence at least one CIA employee allegedly had a role in obtaining signatures for the now debunked statement that 51 former intelligence officials signed, casting doubt on the Hunter Biden story. Right. So more proof coming out.
Yeah. A
Is
few
this
people asked me today, what do you think will happen? And I said, if you want to make good predictions, engage your normalcy bias and make high odds predictions. So
Right.
how often are presidents arrested for corruption, or do these
Right.
investigations yield anything? So,
But also, will more and
Like I
more
said, this
people
is just
start to-
coming out. This is just coming out now that it's comfortable and it can be out.
But will more and more people ever start to become comfortable with the idea that they expect this to happen? Like, so when you hear a story, you know it's going to eventually, this is going to happen to the story. Like, you know that
that's
it's going to
interesting.
turn out to be a lie because they always are.
Cognitive dissonance, man.
it's
Well,
also going to further tribalize people because this story will lionize the Bidens for people who are never Trumpers or Trump
Right.
haters.
Well, on that metric too of like who would you rather have a beer with? I got to admit, having a beer with Hunter Biden sounds like it would be higher up on the list than any other candidate so far.
All of these stories serve to just ensconce Biden and Trump. Like them both being investigated is just more press for them, which is all
Yeah,
you
man.
need to run for president is the most press. You know what I mean? Donald Trump proved that. So it's like, it's just more attention to them, more press for them. And you don't worry about RFK. Don't worry about libertarians or anything else. Just focus on these two idiots, and like,
Right.
so now they're both being lionized to their own base and demonized by the other half. So it's like, just by the time where debate season would have been, just people are going to be so enraptured with either Trump or Biden stories that they have no mental energy left to do anything else.
Andreas, when we were talking about this a little bit earlier, you started to mention the old age of the presidents, and I wanted to know where you were going to go with that, because I've got a theory that if you believe in the King Kill 33 sort of premise, there's almost this motivation to make sure that the president keeps getting older and older and weaker, because as a figurehead, that then makes the country weaker and
And
sort
the
of
king
stabilized.
King Charles too, being the oldest coronated monarch of all time.
Right.
Why
I
am
think
I
getting
thinking
people out
of
of
Lord of the Rings? In this one Lord of the Rings, where in the beginning of this old king who's like frozen or something and possessed or whatever.
Yeah.
I forgot which part, but
Yeah, I know you mean he had worm tongue whispering in his ear. I don't remember.
yeah, that's the king you
Boromir's
don't want to
father,
have.
right?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. I mean, young king coming. That's probably it. All right. Last one I want to cover is the analysis proves that most Bronze Age iron came from space. I did this mainly because of Andy.
Not all the elements came from space.
Come on.
Oh
No.
shit. We are in space.
They came from volcanoes. Didn't you read the back of your Dr. Bronner's? Yeah, Mothership,
Oh,
Space,
shoot.
Earth. Okay, new analysis proves
Must
most, if not all, Bronze Age iron is alien. That was the way I read it. I thought it was way funnier when they used the word alien. But
Those ancient origins.
Yeah, of course. But what do you want to say about this? So you don't think that this stuff comes from space? You think it's from volcanoes?
Oh
or
no,
what?
I'm sure it could come from either place, but I mean, just to say it, like the way they frame it again, it's just like make sure you're thinking this is probably something magical from extraterrestrials.
Yeah, but why not something magical from Thule or
Cargo
Thule?
cult
Yeah.
again.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it's a scale problem thing again. It's like, oh, iron is from here, and it's no, now it's from there, and it's like, well, here just became there. Like it's all it's all one system. Reality is
the
one
issue
system.
is
No matter
anything that exceeds the bounds of normal civilization then easily gets called alien, although it could be recent Tartarian or a bunch of other things.
True.
And then it gets muddy in definition, and
it could be Tokarian.
I don't know. The cargo cult thing to me seems like we're living in that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about aliens. It could just be like that movie 10,000 BC, where there's just a dude who wears a cloak, and they think he's an alien. It's pretty. It's not hard to do the Wizard of Oz thing. People will just kind of go with it.
Well, especially when you look at the etymology and like the language around it, like what alien means and like what we've just allowed it to
legal
kind of
definition
become,
of alien too. Yeah.
I find that a
Again,
lot that when you
alien,
look back in
very
history,
racist, undocumented
it's
work.
not
Whenever this
necessarily
argument
that we
comes
have-
up, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say we don't necessarily have like hidden history or the language has been
Exo-barbarian.
changed. It's just like the perceptions around words and language have been altered and manipulated.
Yeah, we're saying barbarians. That's basically what it is.
Barbar.
People talk about barbarians all the time. It's like, oh man,
their bars were bare.
dude, I got abducted by barbarians. Oh, okay.
Well, I like the cargo cult reference too, but it always makes me think of the Gods Must Be Crazy, where the pilot throws the Coke bottle out of the window, and the tribes people find it. And
Changes
it's like this,
everything,
we always
changes
talk
the
about
whole
that
vibe.
on this show, man. I love it. And
God,
last week
so
I brought up.
cool.
We're a cargo cult. Like just what I was saying, we've inherited these traditions that are meaningless to us. We have obelisks everywhere. We don't even know why. We're a
giant
cargo
dicks.
cult.
Yeah.
We stumble upon these obelisks. We're like, now we worship this.
I tried to put this movie
We
on
do.
YouTube
We
because
still
it's
do
public domain,
subconsciously.
and then YouTube got upset. They're like, "Oh, you're showing nudity of like children." I'm like, "What the fuck is the movie?"
This movie is public domain.
I think it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. At least on some level, it is. There's some issues there,
Came
but
out in
in
the
certain
80s,
places,
didn't
yeah, but they
man,
didn't protect it properly in South Africa.
I was like,
Okay.
please don't let the 80s be 50 years ago yet.
Frederick Soddy, he used to play with Radium. We'll talk about it next time, but make sure you go to Paranoid American and look at all of his amazing stuff. Go to the link pop and check it out. You can also check out his art on Twitter and his YouTube. This is his YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube. And of course, paranoidamerican.com if you didn't already know, where you can click on the chosen one at the very top and you can make sure that you're one of the people that are waiting for this issue 2 of the Chosen One, Secret Society of the Podfather, which is on Kickstarter. And it doesn't cost you anything. You just have to log in and say, you're ready to follow it. And when it comes out, you get to know.
We just need to feed the algorithm. That's all this is.
Feed the algorithm. Feed the homunculus.
You're hired, Andreas. You're always the best spokesman for this.
You give me something to sell. You know what I'm saying? And then BBDC. Speaking of which, she's got a great store with some amazing merchandise, which is all up here right now. You got No Mask, Don't Ask. Come on, how based is that? That's a pretty sweet shirt.
Yeah, all that like political stuff is going away soon. Like I've got a
last time
shirt and so it'll all be gone by the time my new album's out, and it'll just be music merch at that point.
Yeah, go for a VBDC and then VBDC on Linktree.
I might keep Truther. I should keep Truther though.
Truther's chill. Isn't it? That's really fun. But you can watch the music videos and also the music videos on the YouTube. So subscribe to the YouTube. Look at that. It's been growing, which is great. BBDC also on the link.
I didn't even notice that. That's great. Nice.
Yeah, you're doing all right.
At 1,000. Sweet.
Yeah, and then you can monetize. So guys, push him over the limit, and then also go to his Instagram where you can watch his show, because he has his own show called Talkie Time, where he on Instagram goes on about what's really going on in the world, and it is unfiltered and does not have
just fun philosophy, totally unplanned. I don't have all topics and links ready like you.
Right.
So,
I don't know if I do, but
I'm working hard on the new album. It's coming great. 12 songs are almost done. I sent everything out for horns and features and stuff like that. So it's looking really good for this summer. I wanted to recommend, I watched on Amazon Prime last night. I didn't realize the Dragonlance novels. I don't know if anyone else grew up reading those besides me, but there's a great animated version of the first one that had Kiefer Sutherland and some other cool actors in it. And I randomly watched that last night, and I thought it was like super entertaining. 90 minutes went by so fast. I was like, that's over already. Like 90 minutes of Avatar 2 felt like I was in the DMV for 4 days.
Wow.
So this
All right,
movie
I'll
just
check-
flew by.
I'll
Good
check that
recommendation.
out. Make sure you also go to the Deep Share podcast, and you can follow Andy Rouse's stuff there. He's got a video he put out just 12 days ago, The Science of the ECS with Dr. Matt Adams and Shane Newsom. Quality over quantity.
Yes, sir. And tomorrow I'm dropping a big. Tomorrow's my birthday.
Oh,
and
happy
I'm-
birthday. What?
Well, thank you,
Andy.
friends.
Happy birthday.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And I'm dropping a big birthday roundtable bash with
Sweet.
Narco Longo, Juan Ayala, Danonaki Dan,
Wow.
my friend Joke Hagstrom from Sweden. It was awesome. We killed
Dude.
it. So yeah,
Can't wait to
Be
hear
sure to
that. That's
tune
going
in
to be
tomorrow.
amazing. Sweet. All right. Yeah, Dr. Longo. That's going to be cool. And then also Act Like You Know 26 is Raf's YouTube channel where you can get all sorts of amazing stuff. He's got videos with David Ewing Jr., a lot of stuff you haven't heard before, some really great pieces there. And then he does Team Rabbit Hole, an amazing conversation show that he has with our friend Jim Kincaid. And he's also doing Neuropa with myself, which is available here. And it's like a Euro world history kind of show that we're putting together. It's pretty rad. Also, you can check out, if you speak German or you know someone who speaks German, he's translated my video and a number of other cool documentaries. I've made them available in German. So you can actually watch this in German, which for me is cool because I love to hear myself translate. Me as Raf. How sweet is that? But you know someone who needs to know about these things and they speak German more than they speak English, throw them this link, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
I like that meme.
Pretty sweet. Okay, and then tartarinova.com. Make sure you like, subscribe, send us money, join the Discord, argue with us, love us. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for
Shout
being
out
here.
chat.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Peace.
The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Zertis or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Goodbye. Have a beautiful time.